2 months after I buried my best friend Michael, his lawyer called me into his office and handed me a cold silver USB drive. I thought it was just legal documents or maybe some old photos from our fishing trips. But when Abraham Cohen looked at me, his face was pale like he had seen a ghost. He locked the heavy oak door and whispered, "Arthur, you need to watch this right now. And whatever you do, do not go home to your wife Delilah until you see this." I laughed nervously. I told him he was being dramatic. But then I plugged the drive in. The screen flickered, and there was Michael. He looked skeletal, eaten away by what the doctors called cancer. He leaned into the camera, his eyes burning with a terrifying intensity, and said, "Arthur, I did not die of cancer. I was poisoned. And you are next. Check your insulin, old friend. The bottle in your fridge right now is not medicine. It is water. They are waiting for you to die tonight." That video didn't just break my heart. It saved my life. Before I tell you how I caught the killers sleeping in my own house, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones holding the knife. I sat there in that leather chair, the air in the office feeling suddenly thin and suffocating. The mahogany clock on the wall ticked loudly, counting down seconds I didn't know I was losing. Abraham Cohen, a man I had known for 30 years, a man who never showed emotion, was trembling. He pushed a glass of water toward me, but I couldn't move. My eyes were glued to the laptop screen. On it, Michael Evans, the strongest man I ever knew, a retired private investigator who had survived shootouts and stakeouts, looked like a shadow of himself. He was wearing his favorite flannel shirt, the one he wore when we fixed up my classic Mustang, but it hung loosely on his frame. He coughed a wet, rattling sound that made my own chest ache. "Arthur, listen to me closely," Michael said from the screen. His voice was raspy but clear. "I do not have much time. The doctors say it is pancreatic cancer. They are fools." I started feeling the burning in my stomach 6 months ago, the hair loss, the metallic taste in my mouth. I recognized the signs. Art. It was arsenic. Slow, small doses mixed into my morning coffee. By the time I figured it out and got the blood tests done privately, my kidneys were already shutting down. I am a dead man walking. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. I wanted to reach into the screen and grab him. Why didn't he tell me? Why did he suffer alone? As if reading my mind, Michael continued. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to be a target yet. I needed to find out who was pulling the strings. It is not just my wife, Art. It is bigger. It is Courtney, your daughter-in-law." My blood ran cold. Courtney. The sweet blonde girl my son Tyrell married 3 years ago, the one who volunteered at the animal shelter. Michael held up a stack of papers to the camera. "Her name isn't Courtney. It is Sarah. She did this in Chicago 5 years ago. She married a man, a wealthy retired mechanic just like us, and he died of a mysterious sudden illness 6 months later. She walked away with $2 million. Now she is in Atlanta, and she is coaching Delilah." I slammed my fist on Cohen's desk. "That is a lie," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Delilah loves me. We have been married for 40 years. She nursed me when I had my heart attack. She goes to church every Sunday." Michael on the screen shook his head slowly, looking at me with infinite sadness. "I know you don't want to believe it, Art. I didn't want to believe it about my Linda either. But open your eyes. Think about the last few weeks. Has your blood sugar been erratic? Have you felt dizzy after meals? Check the insulin, Art. The new batch you picked up last Tuesday. Courtney picked it up for you, didn't she? She said she was doing you a favor." I froze. He was right. Courtney had offered to go to the pharmacy. She said I looked tired. She brought the bag back sealed, or so I thought. Michael leaned closer to the lens. "Check it. And check the life insurance policy. They doubled it last month without you knowing. I love you, brother. Don't let them get away with it. Survive, for both of us." The screen went black. I sat in silence. The silence of a tomb. Cohen pulled the USB drive out and handed it to me. "I have the original copy in a safe deposit box," Cohen said quietly. "This is yours. If you go to the police now, they will laugh at you. They will say it is the ramblings of a dying man on heavy medication. You need proof, Arthur. You need to catch them in the act." I walked out of that office into the bright Atlanta sun, but everything looked gray. My hands were shaking so hard, I dropped my keys twice before I could unlock my car door. I sat in the driver's seat of my Cadillac, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm of denial and fear. Delilah. My Delilah. I thought about the breakfast she made me this morning, the way she kissed my cheek and told me to be careful. Was it all a performance? Was she looking at my neck and wondering why I wasn't dead yet? I started the engine. The drive home felt like a funeral procession. Every red light seemed to mock me. I remembered the Sunday dinners. Tyrell, my son, complaining about how the world was against him, how he couldn't get ahead, and Courtney sitting next to him, placing a calming hand on his arm, looking at me with those wide, innocent blue eyes. "Arthur, you should rest," she would say. "Let us handle the bills. Let us handle the house." They were vultures, circling, waiting for the animal to weaken. I pulled into my driveway. The house looked the same as it always did. The brick facade I had paid for with 40 years of sweat on the assembly line. The manicured lawn I took pride in. But now it looked like a trap, a beautiful, expensive cage. Delilah's car was in the driveway. She was home. I entered through the garage, trying to keep my breathing steady. I could hear humming coming from the kitchen. It was a gospel song. Amazing Grace. The irony made me want to vomit. I needed to know. I needed to know if my best friend was right or if he was crazy. I crept into the kitchen. Delilah was in the backyard hanging laundry. I could see her through the window. She looked peaceful. I turned my attention to the refrigerator. I opened the door. The cold air hit my face. There it was, the small glass vial on the butter shelf, my lifeline, the medicine that kept my diabetes in check. I grabbed the vial. It felt normal. It looked clear, just like insulin. Maybe Michael was wrong. Maybe the cancer had spread to his brain. I wanted him to be wrong more than I had ever wanted anything in my life. I took the vial and slipped it into my pocket. I went down to the basement to my old workbench. I had kept a few things from my days as a quality control engineer at the auto plant. One of them was a simple chemical testing kit. I used to use it to test fluid purity. My hands were trembling so bad I almost dropped the slide. I placed a single drop of the liquid from the vial onto the glass. I reached for the reagent bottle. Iodine solution. If this was insulin, the proteins would react. It would turn a faint yellowish brown. If it was just water or saline, it would stay clear. "Please," I whispered to the empty room, "please be insulin. Please let my wife be innocent." I squeezed the dropper. 1 drop, 2 drops. I held my breath. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. The liquid stayed perfectly crystal clear. It wasn't insulin, it was water. I stared at the slide, my vision blurring. It wasn't tears, it was rage, a hot, blinding rage that started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. Michael was right. They weren't treating my disease. They were feeding it. Every time I injected this fake medicine, I was letting my blood sugar spike higher and higher. They were watching me kill myself day by day, injection by injection. I heard the floorboards creak above me. Delilah was walking back into the kitchen. I heard her voice calling out sweet and sing-songy. "Arthur, is that you, honey? You're home early." I gripped the edge of the workbench. I wanted to march upstairs and scream. I wanted to shake her. But then I heard Michael's voice in my head. "They are waiting for you to go into a coma. Don't let them get away with it." If I confronted her now, she would deny it. She would say it was a pharmacy error. She would say Courtney made a mistake. They would cover their tracks. Tyrell and Courtney would come over and they would gaslight me. They would say I was old, paranoid, losing my mind. They would use this to put me in a home even faster. No, I couldn't react. Not yet. I took a deep breath, forcing the rage down, locking it away in a steel box inside my heart. I wiped the slide clean. I put the vial back in my pocket. I looked at myself in the dusty mirror hanging over my tools. An old man stared back. Gray hair, wrinkles, eyes tired from grief. But behind those eyes, something had changed. The sadness was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of a man who had survived Detroit gang wars and corporate layoffs. I wasn't just Arthur Robinson, the retired engineer, anymore. I was a man at war. I walked up the stairs, my steps heavy but steady. I walked into the kitchen. Delilah turned to me, a smile plastered on her face. She was chopping vegetables. The knife glinted in the afternoon sun. "Hey, baby," she said, coming over to peck me on the cheek. Her lips felt cold. "How was the lawyer? Did he have anything for you from poor Michael?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with for 4 decades. And for the first time, I saw the mask. I saw the tightness around her eyes. The way her hand gripped the knife just a little too hard. Nothing much, I lied, my voice steady, surprising even myself. "Just some old photos. Memories." She relaxed, visibly. "Oh, that's nice. Well, go wash up. Courtney and Tyrell are coming over for dinner tonight. I'm making your favorite, honey-glazed ribs. My favorite. And also the deadliest thing I could eat with untreated diabetes, a sugar bomb. That sounds delicious, Delilah, I said. I can't wait. I turned away before she could see the hatred in my eyes. Tonight wasn't just dinner, it was an execution. They expected me to inject the fake insulin and slip quietly into a coma while they drank wine and toasted to their inheritance. But they didn't know one thing. They didn't know Arthur Robinson was already on to them. I touched the phone in my pocket. I needed to call Cohen back. I needed a plan. And I needed to survive the deadliest meal of my life. The smell hit me the moment I stepped out of the bathroom. It used to be my favorite scent in the world. The rich and smoky aroma of pork ribs slow roasting in the oven mixed with the heavy sweetness of caramelized brown sugar and molasses. For 40 years, that smell meant love. It meant celebration. It meant Delilah had spent hours in the kitchen just to make me smile. But tonight, that smell made my stomach turn over in cold, hard knots. It did not smell like dinner. It smelled like a weapon. I stood in the hallway for a moment, watching my wife through the open archway. She was humming that gospel tune again, moving around the kitchen with a little dance in her step. On the counter sat an empty bag of brown sugar and a jar of honey. Both were empty. She had used every grain, every drop. She knew perfectly well that with my condition, sugar was poison. A meal like this, combined with the fake insulin in my pocket, was not just a dietary cheat. It was a calculated attempt to send me into a diabetic coma before the 10 o'clock news. Delilah turned and saw me. Her face lit up with that practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked over. "Honey, you look so pale," she cooed, reaching up to touch my forehead. Her hand felt damp and cold. "You need some good food in you. I made your special sticky ribs. Extra sauce, just the way you like them." I forced myself not to recoil from her touch. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "That smells wonderful, Delilah," I said. "You really outdid yourself." She patted my chest right over my heart. "Well, we have a lot to celebrate," she said. "Tyrell is bringing Courtney over. It is a family night." She turned back to the stove to baste the ribs one more time, drowning them in the dark, sticky glaze. I looked at the back of her head and wondered who this woman was. The Delilah I married would have slapped my hand away if I tried to eat a donut. This stranger was practically force-feeding me glucose. I walked to the dining table and sat down at the head, my usual spot. The table was set with the good china, the plates we only used for Thanksgiving. It felt like a last supper, and in a way, I suppose it was intended to be. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Delilah rushed to answer it, and a moment later the air in the room grew heavy and toxic. My son Tyrell walked in first. He was 35 years old, but he still walked with the slump of a teenager who owed someone money. He was wearing a designer suit that I knew cost more than my first car, but it looked cheap on him because he wore it with no pride. Behind him was Courtney, my daughter-in-law. She was a vision of suburban perfection in a cream-colored dress that probably cost $3,000. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes scanned the room like a shark scanning a reef. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the furniture. She was looking at the paintings. She was calculating the liquidation value of my life. "Hi, Dad," Tyrell mumbled, avoiding my eyes. He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. He looked sweaty, nervous, like he knew what was supposed to happen tonight. Courtney, however, was the picture of confidence. She glided over to me and placed a heavy bottle of red wine on the table right in front of my plate. It was a dark, expensive Cabernet. "Happy birthday, Arthur," she said, flashing a smile that showed too many teeth. "I know your birthday isn't for another month, but Tyrell and I saw this and thought of you. It is a vintage reserve, very smooth. You have to try it tonight." I looked at the bottle. Alcohol processes into sugar. Alcohol clouds judgment. Alcohol makes you sleepy. It was the perfect chaser for the poison ribs. "Thank you, Courtney," I said, my voice flat. "You shouldn't have." "Oh, it is the least we could do," she said, taking her seat next to Tyrell. She placed a hand on his arm, and I saw him flinch slightly. Delilah brought the platter of ribs to the table. The steam rose up thick and syrupy. She piled 3 huge ribs onto my plate and ladled extra sauce over them until the meat was swimming in it. "Eat up, Arthur," she said. "You are looking so thin lately. It breaks my heart." I picked up my fork. The 3 of them were watching me. It was subtle, but I caught it. Tyrell was staring at his water glass, but his eyes flicked up to my plate every 2 seconds. Delilah was pretending to cut her own meat, but she had stopped chewing. Courtney was watching me openly, her chin resting on her hand, a small, expectant smirk playing on her lips. They were waiting for me to take the first bite. The bite that would signal the beginning of the end. "I need a toast first," Courtney said suddenly. She grabbed the wine bottle and uncorked it with practiced ease. She poured a large glass for me, filling it almost to the brim. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "To the future." Tyrell raised his glass. Delilah raised hers. I lifted the heavy crystal goblet. The wine swirled dark and ominous. "To family," I said. I brought the glass to my lips. I didn't drink. I just let the liquid touch my tongue. It was bitter. I pretended to take a large gulp, but kept the liquid in my mouth before wiping my mouth with a napkin and spitting it out into the thick fabric. They didn't notice. They were too busy drinking their own victory. So Courtney started setting her glass down. Tyrell and I were talking. "We are worried about you. This house, it is so big, ideally huge, and the maintenance must be a nightmare for someone your age." I cut a piece of the rib. I didn't eat it. I just moved it around the plate. "I am managing fine, Courtney," I said. Tyrell chimed in, his voice shaky. "Yeah, but Dad, think about it. If you sold this place, you could get a nice condo, something with a nurse on site. You know, just in case." Delilah nodded enthusiastically. "They are right, Arthur. I get so worried when I leave you alone here. What if you fall? What if you have an episode?" The irony was so thick I could choke on it. They were worried I would have an episode, yet they were feeding me the trigger for one. I managed to slide the meat from my fork into the napkin on my lap while reaching for the water. I did this 3 times. To them it looked like I was eating. I took another fake sip of wine. Then I decided it was time. Time to see if there was any humanity left in the people sitting at this table. Time to see if my son was a murderer or just a coward. I let my fork clatter loudly onto the china plate. The sound rang out like a gunshot in the silent room. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. I let out a low groan and squeezed my eyes shut. Arthur, Delilah asked, her voice sharp. "What is wrong?" I didn't answer. I started to pant, taking shallow, ragged breaths. I brought my hand up to my chest, clutching my shirt. My head, I gasped. My chest. It feels like an elephant. I slumped forward, my forehead hitting the tablecloth. I knocked the wine glass over on purpose. The red liquid spread across the white fabric like a blood stain, growing larger and larger toward Courtney. "Oh my God." Tyrell stood up, his chair scraping back loudly. Dad, are you okay?" He looked terrified. For a second I saw the boy I raised. He reached for his pocket, probably to grab his phone. He was going to call 911, but then Courtney spoke. Her voice was ice cold. "Calm down, Tyrell. Sit down. He is having a heart attack." Tyrell yelled, his hand trembling. "We need an ambulance." "No, we don't," Courtney snapped. "Look at him. He is just having a spell." "He probably ate too fast. If you call an ambulance now, they will just drag him to the hospital, run a bunch of expensive tests, and stress him out more." Delilah was standing over me now. She wasn't checking my pulse. She wasn't loosening my collar. She was just watching. Tyrell looked at his mother. "Mom, call 911, he pleaded. Delilah looked at Courtney. Then she looked at me. I was watching them through a slit in my eyelids. I saw the hesitation. I saw the calculation. And then I saw the decision. "Courtney is right, Tyrell," Delilah said quietly. She put a hand on Tyrell's shoulder and pushed him back down into his chair. "Your father hates hospitals. You know that. Let him rest. He probably just needs to sleep it off." "But Mom," Tyrell whimpered. "He looks bad." "He is fine," Courtney said, pouring herself another glass of wine. Her hand didn't even shake. "The sugar crash is making him sleepy. Let him pass out. It will be peaceful. We will check on him in an hour. If he is still like this, then we can call. Let him rest." That was their code. Let him die. I lay there with my face pressed against the wine-soaked tablecloth, listening to the silence that followed. My heart was beating strong and steady in my chest, but inside it was breaking into a million pieces. My wife, my son, my daughter-in-law. They were sitting 3 feet away from a dying man, and they were choosing to finish their dinner. Tyrell sat back down. I heard the clink of his fork against his plate. He was eating. He was actually eating while his father lay dying on the table. I knew then that I had no family. I had enemies. And as I lay there playing dead, I made a promise to Michael and to myself. If they wanted a funeral, they would get one, but it wouldn't be mine. The time for mercy was over. The time for justice had begun. I let out one last long exhale and went limp. Now the real game could start. I laid there on the king-sized bed, my body heavy as lead sinking into the mattress. I kept my breathing shallow and rhythmic, mimicking the deep sleep of a man slipping into a coma. But inside my mind was a raging storm. I was wide awake. My hearing had sharpened in the darkness, amplified by the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I heard the door click shut and the lock turn. Then the looting began. It started with the sound of drawers being ripped open. These were not the gentle sounds of a wife looking for a blanket to cover her sick husband. These were the violent, frantic sounds of thieves tearing apart a vault. I heard the heavy thud of my wooden jewelry box hitting the floor. That box was a gift from my father. It held my cufflinks and the gold watch I received after 30 years at the assembly plant. I heard the velvet lining rip. I heard the gold clattering against the hardwood floor. "Find it," Delilah hissed. Her voice was unrecognizable. It wasn't the sweet melodic tone she used in the choir. It was a guttural growl. "He must have the new will in here somewhere. He has been acting strange all week. If he changed the beneficiary to that damn charity, we are finished." I felt the mattress shift as someone climbed onto the bed next to me. It was Courtney. I could smell her expensive perfume. It was a cloying floral scent that masked the rot of her soul. She was reaching over me, checking the nightstand. Her hand brushed against my face, and I had to use every ounce of willpower not to bite her fingers. "This room is a museum of junk," Courtney spat. "Look at this, Arthur. Old receipts, photos of dead people. Why do old people hold on to so much trash?" Tyrell checked the closet, checked the pockets of his suits. He probably hid the key in one of those dusty jackets he wears to church. I heard Tyrell shuffling towards the closet. I heard the screech of wire hangers sliding across the metal rod. I heard fabric tearing. That was my navy blue suit. The one I wore to Tyrell's graduation. The one I wore when I told him I was proud of him. Now he was ripping the lining apart, looking for a piece of paper that would grant him permission to sell my life's work. "Nothing here," Mom Tyrell whispered, his voice trembling. "Just old handkerchiefs and mints." "Are you sure he didn't leave it with the lawyer?" "He didn't leave it with the lawyer," Delilah snapped. "I checked the logs. He brought a file home yesterday. It has to be the amendment. If we don't find it and destroy it before he dies, the state will lock everything down for months. We need cash now, Tyrell. Unless you want those loan sharks to come back and finish breaking your legs." The mention of the loan sharks made Tyrell move faster. I heard him dumping my shoeboxes out. I heard the crash of a lamp. They were destroying our sanctuary. This was the room where we conceived our children. The room where we cried when my mother died. The room where I thought I was safe. Now it was just a crime scene, and I was the evidence they were trying to dispose of. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was terrified that they would see the blanket moving from the force of my heartbeat. I tried to think of calm things. Fishing with Michael. The sound of the ocean. But all I could hear was the greed in their voices. They weren't looking for memories. They were looking for numbers. Account numbers. Routing numbers. Access codes. Then the room went silent. The kind of silence that comes before a gunshot. "The safe," Courtney whispered. I felt the air in the room shift. They were all looking at the heavy steel safe bolted into the wall behind the master armchair. It was a high-security model. Michael had installed it for me a year ago when he first started suspecting trouble. It was fireproof, drill-proof, and blast-proof. I tried the birthday, Tyrell said. I tried his anniversary. I tried the day he retired. It is locked out. We need the master code. Delilah let out a frustrated noise that sounded like an animal in a trap. "He changed it," she muttered. "He actually changed it. That paranoid old fool." There was a pause. Then Courtney spoke. Her voice was calm and terrifyingly practical. "We don't need the code," she said. "Look at the panel. It is biometrically enabled. It takes a fingerprint override." I stopped breathing. I literally stopped breathing. The biometric scanner. I had set it up months ago for convenience, but after Michael's warning I had gone into the settings and disabled it. Or had I? My mind raced. I remembered sitting there with the manual. I remembered navigating the menu, but did I hit save? In my panic, I couldn't be sure. If I hadn't disabled it, they would open that safe. And inside that safe wasn't just money. It was the evidence. The USB drive from Michael. The log of my blood sugar readings. The contact info for the private investigator I had hired. If they found that, they would know I was onto them. And then they wouldn't wait for the diabetes to kill me. They would use a pillow. "Get him up," Courtney ordered. "What?" Tyrell asked. "Get him up, Tyrell," Courtney hissed. "Drag him over to the chair. He is unconscious, not dead. His finger still works." I felt hands on me, my son's hands. He grabbed my shoulders. His grip was weak and sweaty. He smelled of fear and cheap mints. "Dad," he whispered. "Dad, wake up." "He is not going to wake up, you idiot," Delilah said, grabbing my feet. "The sugar crash has him out cold. Just lift him." They hauled me up. I had to make my body go limp. Dead weight. It is incredibly hard to be dead weight when every instinct in your body is screaming to fight. My head lolled back. My mouth fell open. I let out a low, guttural snore to sell the performance. They dragged me across the carpet. My heels dug into the floor. My pajama top rode up, scraping my back against the fabric of the chair as they propped me up in front of the safe. "This is insane," Tyrell whimpered. "This is wrong." "What is wrong is being broke," Tyrell, Courtney snapped. "Do you want to be poor forever? Do you want to work at a gas station?" Grab his hand, the right index finger. That is the one he always uses. I felt Tyrell grab my right hand. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold mine steady. My hand felt cold in his. Cold and limp. The hand that taught him to throw a baseball. The hand that signed his tuition checks. The hand that picked him up when he fell off his bike. Now he was using it like a tool. Like a stolen key. He pressed my finger against the cold glass of the scanner. I held my breath. Beep. A red light flashed on the safe panel. "Access denied." "Try it again," Delilah commanded. "You didn't press hard enough." Tyrell pressed harder. He was crushing my fingertip against the glass. It hurt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to open my eyes and look him in the face and ask him how he could do this to his own father. Beep. "Access denied." "Use the thumb," Courtney said. Maybe he switched fingers. They jammed my thumb against the sensor, then my middle finger, then my pinky. They were frantic now, twisting my wrist, pulling my arm, treating me like a broken doll. Beep, beep, beep. "It is not working," Tyrell cried, dropping my hand. My arm fell to my side, swinging lifelessly. He locked it out. He disabled the print reader. "Damn him," Delilah screamed. She kicked the safe. She actually kicked the metal box. Damn him to hell. He knew. Somehow he knew. They stood there panting. The frustration in the room was palpable. They were 3 feet away from millions of dollars and they couldn't touch it. "What do we do now?" Tyrell asked. "We wait," Courtney said. "We wait for him to wake up, or we wait for him to die. If he dies, we get a court order to drill it. If he wakes up, we make him open it." "Make him?" Tyrell asked. "How?" Payne, Courtney said simply. "Everyone has a breaking point." That was the moment. That was the moment I knew I couldn't just lie there anymore. If I stayed unconscious, they might decide to speed up the process or start torturing me for the code. I needed to reset the board. I needed to buy time. I let out a long, loud groan. I twitched my leg. I coughed, sputtering as if I was choking on air. "He is waking up," Tyrell hissed, jumping back as if I was a zombie. "Quick, get him back on the bed," Delilah whispered. "No time," Courtney said. "Just prop him up. Act normal." I fluttered my eyelids open. The room was spinning, not because of the sickness, but because of the rage. I focused my eyes. I saw the 3 of them standing around me in a semicircle. They looked like vultures caught eating a carcass. Tyrell was pale. Delilah was smoothing her dress, trying to look composed. Courtney was just staring at me, cold and unblinking. "Dad," Tyrell squeaked. "Dad, can you hear me?" I groaned again, rubbing my head. I looked at my hand. The hand they had just violated. I looked at the safe. Then I looked at them. What happened?" I rasped. My voice sounded weak and confused. It was the best acting performance of my life. Why am I on the floor? "Oh, honey." Delilah rushed forward, falling to her knees beside me. Her face instantly transformed into a mask of concern. "You gave us such a scare. You fell." You were walking to the bathroom and you just collapsed right here. We were trying to lift you back into bed, but you were so heavy. I looked at the distance from the bed to the chair. It was 10 feet. Her lie was sloppy, but I had to accept it. I fell, I repeated. Yes, Dad, Tyrell said eagerly. You passed out. We were just checking your pulse. We were so worried, checking my pulse by jamming my finger onto a safe scanner. I need water, I whispered. I will get it, Courtney said. She turned and walked to the bathroom. As she walked away, I saw her look back at the safe one last time. Her eyes promised violence. Delilah and Tyrell helped me stand up. They were gentle now. Fake gentle. They guided me back to the bed and tucked me in. Delilah stroked my forehead. You just rest, Arthur, she said. We are right here. We are not going anywhere. That was what I was afraid of. As I lay there sipping the water, Courtney brought me water I prayed wasn't poisoned. I realized the terrifying truth. They didn't want me dead. Not yet. A dead man can't type a code. A dead man can't sign a transfer. They needed me alive and suffering until I gave up the keys to the kingdom. I looked at Tyrell. He was avoiding my gaze, rubbing his hands together. He looked guilty, but not guilty enough to stop. He was weak. And in this house, weakness was just as dangerous as malice. I closed my eyes again, pretending to drift off, but under the blanket, my hand curled into a fist. They wanted the code. They wanted the money. They wanted my life. Well, they were about to find out that Arthur Robinson didn't build cars for 30 years without learning how to drive over a few bumps. They thought they had trapped a helpless old man, but they had just locked themselves in a cage with a lion who was finally wide awake. And this lion was hungry for justice. The war for my mind began the very next morning. If the dinner was an assault on my body, the days that followed were a siege on my sanity. Delilah didn't try to poison me again right away. Instead, she tried to convince me that I was already losing my grip on reality. It started with small things. My reading glasses, which had lived on the mahogany nightstand every night for 20 years, were gone when I woke up. I spent an hour tearing the room apart, my heart racing with frustration, only to find them in the refrigerator next to the milk. Delilah stood in the doorway, shaking her head with a look of pity that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Arthur," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You must have put them there when you got the water last night. Don't you remember? The doctor warned us that confusion was a side effect of your condition. I hadn't put them there. I knew I hadn't put them there. But the seed of doubt was planted not in my mind, but in the narrative she was building. By the afternoon, it was my medication. I walked into the kitchen at noon to take my blood pressure pills, but the bottle was empty. I knew for a fact I had refilled it on Monday. I stared at the amber plastic container, feeling the room spin. Delilah walked in, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Honey, why are you staring at the empty bottle?" she asked. "You took the last one this morning with your coffee." "I watched you." "I did not." I snapped, my voice rising. "I haven't had coffee yet. And this bottle was full yesterday." She sighed, a long, suffering sound that suggested she had been dealing with a toddler. "Arthur, you took them. You even complained that they were hard to swallow. Tyrell was here. He saw you too. She was rewriting history in real time. And because I was the patient, because I was the one with the diagnosis of high blood pressure and diabetes, I was the unreliable narrator of my own life. I stormed out of the kitchen, retreating to my study. But even my sanctuary had been violated. My favorite chair was moved 3 inches to the left. My books were rearranged. The clock on the wall was set an hour ahead. It was a psychological water torture designed to make me question my own senses. They wanted me to believe I was crazy so that when I finally claimed they were trying to kill me, no one would listen. They were painting a picture of a senile old man losing his faculties so they could justify taking legal control. The main assault came 2 days later. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sky was gray and heavy with rain. I was sitting in the living room pretending to read a newspaper while actually cataloging the items Delilah had moved. Tyrell and Courtney arrived together. They didn't knock. They just walked in like they owned the place, and in their minds they already did. Courtney was carrying a thick blue legal folder. She wasn't smiling today. She looked serious, professional, and dangerous. Tyrell looked at his shoes, refusing to meet my eyes as usual. "Dad, we need to talk," Courtney said, dropping the folder onto the coffee table. The sound echoed in the silent room like a gavel strike. "We got the call from the bank. They said you tried to freeze the accounts." I put the newspaper down slowly. I did freeze them, I said, my voice steady. It is my money. I can do what I want with it. Courtney sat down opposite me, crossing her legs. She looked at me with the expression of a disappointed teacher. Arthur, we discussed this last week. You can't freeze the accounts because they are not just yours anymore. You signed the power of attorney transfer. Remember. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I never signed anything I said. Courtney opened the folder. She pulled out a document. It was thick, printed on heavy bond paper. She flipped to the last page and spun it around so I could see. There at the bottom of the page in blue ink was my signature. Arthur James Robinson. The loops were mine. The slant was mine. It looked exactly like the way I had signed my name on thousands of inspection reports at the factory. I stared at it. My mouth went dry. That is a forgery, I whispered. Don't be difficult, Dad Tyrell spoke up from the corner. His voice was whiny and thin. You signed it last Thursday. We were all here. We had pizza. You said you didn't want the stress of managing the bills anymore. You said you wanted Courtney to handle the investments. I looked at my son. He was lying to my face. But he believed the lie, or he was trying very hard to. I didn't eat pizza last Thursday, I said, gripping the armrests of my chair. I went to the library. Courtney let out a sharp laugh. The library. Arthur. You haven't been to the library in 3 years. See, this is what we are talking about. Your memory is Swiss cheese. You have good days and bad days, and today is clearly a bad day. She tapped the paper with a manicured nail. This is notarized, Arthur. It is filed. Legally, I am in control of the assets. The bank freeze you tried to put in place, I already lifted it this morning. Blood roared in my ears. They hadn't just forged my signature. They had bribed a notary, or maybe Courtney used one of her old connections from her con artist days in Chicago. They were gaslighting me on a legal level. I am not senile, I growled, standing up. I know what I did and didn't sign, and I am going to call my lawyer. Go ahead, Courtney challenged, leaning back comfortably. Call him. Tell him you forgot signing a document that 3 witnesses saw you sign. Tell him you think your family is stealing from you. You know what he will do. He will ask for a competency hearing. And with your medical records showing these episodes of confusion and aggression, thanks to the notes Delilah has been keeping for the doctor, the judge will put you in a facility so fast your head will spin. I froze. They had thought of everything. Delilah had been keeping notes. Of course she had. Every time I got angry, every time I couldn't find my glasses, she was documenting it, building a case file against my brain. You are evil, I whispered. Courtney stood up and smoothed her skirt. No, Arthur, I am practical, and you are tired. Look at you. You are shaking. You need your medicine. Delilah, bring him his juice. Delilah appeared from the kitchen, instantly holding a glass of almond milk. Here, sweetie, she said, holding it out. Drink this. You will feel better. I looked at the milk. It was white, frothy, and innocent looking. I looked at the document on the table. I looked at my son, who was now studying a painting on the wall to avoid seeing his father cornered. I was trapped. If I fought, they would call the men in white coats. If I drank, I would die. I am not thirsty, I said. I knocked the glass from Delilah's hand. It shattered on the floor, splashing milk onto the Persian rug. Delilah screamed, See Tyrell. See how violent he is getting. He is getting worse every day. Courtney shook her head sadly, picking up the folder. We will have to accelerate the placement, Tyrell. He is a danger to himself. We will come back tomorrow, Arthur. Hopefully you will be more lucid then. They left, leaving me standing in the puddle of milk, trembling with rage. But as soon as the front door closed, the trembling stopped. I wasn't confused. I was focused. They thought they had won the battle of the narrative, but they didn't know I had eyes where they couldn't see. I waited 10 minutes to make sure they were gone. Then I went to the bookshelf. Behind a hollowed-out copy of War and Peace, I pulled out a small black box. It was the receiver for the pinhole cameras Michael had left me. I had spent the entire night before installing them while Delilah was asleep. One in the kitchen inside the smoke detector. One in the living room, hidden in the eyes of an African mask on the wall. I sat down at my desk and opened the tablet. My hands were steady now. I scrolled back through the footage. I needed proof. I needed to see the moment the lie was born. I found it. The timestamp was 10:15 a.m. this morning. On the screen I saw the kitchen in high definition. Delilah was at the counter. Courtney walked in. She looked different when she thought no one was watching. Her face was hard cruel. "Is the old man asleep?" Courtney asked on the video. "Yes," Delilah answered. "He is in the study looking for his glasses. I hid them in the fridge." "Good," Courtney said. She placed her designer purse on the counter. She reached inside and pulled out a small white envelope. It wasn't sugar. It wasn't sweetener. She opened the envelope and tipped a fine white powder into the carton of almond milk. The same carton she had tried to feed me 10 minutes ago. "What is that?" Delilah asked on the recording nervously. Warfarin, Courtney said, her voice crystal clear through the tiny microphone. "Rat poison. But in small doses it is just a blood thinner. It will make him bleed internally. A stroke or a hemorrhage. At his age, with his blood pressure, no one will question it. It is cleaner than the arsenic. Arsenic leaves a trace in the hair. This just looks like a tragedy." I watched as Delilah nodded, taking the carton and shaking it. "Make sure Tyrell doesn't drink it," she said. "I won't let him," Courtney replied. "Now let's go print that fake signature. I practiced it all night." I paused the video. I stared at the frozen image of Courtney pouring death into my breakfast. I looked at the image of my wife shaking the carton like she was making a cocktail. The gaslighting was over. The fog had lifted. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't senile. I was the victim of a murder plot so cold it froze the blood in my veins. But now I had the weapon. I had the truth. They wanted to use the law against me. They wanted to use medical records against me. Fine. I saved the video clip to the encrypted cloud server Michael had set up. I closed the tablet. I walked over to the safe they couldn't open. I looked at the keypad. They thought I was helpless because I couldn't remember where my glasses were. Tomorrow I would show them exactly how sharp my memory was. And I would show them that while they were playing checkers, I had been playing chess with a grandmaster. I went to the kitchen and cleaned up the spilled milk. I did it carefully, wearing rubber gloves, soaking up every drop with paper towels, and sealing them in a Ziploc bag I labeled it Evidence B. Then I sat in my chair and waited for the sun to go down. The time for acting weak was coming to an end. It was time to start the hunt. The silence in the living room was thick enough to choke on. I sat in my leather armchair, the one I had bought with my first bonus check back in '82. I watched the clock on the wall tick, 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 tick. I knew they were coming. The camera in the driveway had alerted me 5 minutes ago. Tyrell's car had skidded to a halt outside, and I could see him arguing with Courtney in the front seat. He looked frantic. She looked angry. They were rehearsing. They were getting their story straight. When the front door finally opened, it wasn't with the usual arrogance. It was slow, hesitant. Tyrell walked in first. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. His designer suit was rumpled. His tie was loose. There were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of expensive concealer could hide. He smelled of stale cigarettes and fear. Dad Tyrell started, his voice cracking instantly. He didn't even say hello. He just dropped to his knees on the Persian rug right in front of me. "Dad, you have to help me. They are going to kill me." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just took a slow sip of my black coffee. "Who is going to kill you, son?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "The investors," he sobbed. He actually squeezed tears out of his eyes. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. The business deal, the crypto startup I told you about, it crashed, Dad. The market bottomed out overnight. I lost everything, not just my money. Their money. $50,000, Dad. They said if I don't have it by Friday, they are going to come for Courtney. They are going to burn our house down. Delilah, who had been standing by the window, rushed over to comfort him. "Oh, my poor baby," she wailed, wrapping her arms around his shaking shoulders. "Arthur, look at him. He is terrified. We have to help him. We can't let anything happen to our son." I looked at Delilah. Then I looked at Tyrell. The dynamic was so familiar it made my stomach turn. For 35 years, she had enabled him. When he stole candy as a kid, she blamed the store owner. When he failed college, she blamed the professors. And now, as he sat there lying about a crypto deal, she was ready to hand him my retirement savings on a silver platter. $50,000, I repeated. "That is a lot of money, Tyrell." "I know, Dad." "I know," Tyrell pleaded, grabbing my hand. His palms were sweaty. "I swear I will pay you back. I just need a bridge loan. Once the market corrects itself, I will double your money. I promise. Just sign the check, please, for the family." Courtney was standing by the door. She wasn't crying. She was watching me with those cold, calculating eyes. She nodded slowly. "Arthur, please," she said softly. "We are desperate. We don't want to burden you, but we are scared for our lives." I looked at the three of them, the liar, the enabler, and the mastermind. I stood up slowly. My knees popped. I walked over to the side table where a thick manila envelope was waiting. I had received it via courier from Michael's private investigator just an hour ago. It was heavy, heavy with truth. I picked it up and weighed it in my hand. "You say the market crashed, Tyrell?" I asked, walking back towards him. "Yes, Dad." Tyrell nodded vigorously, wiping his nose. "It was a bloodbath." "And you were at the office all night trying to save the deal?" I asked. "All night," Tyrell said. "I didn't sleep a wink." I nodded. Then I opened the envelope. I didn't hand the photos to him. I threw them. I threw them hard. They fanned out in the air like a deck of cards raining down on him and Delilah. Glossy 8x10 prints hitting the floor with a satisfying slap. Tyrell looked down. His face went from pathetic to horrified in a split second. The photos didn't show an office. They didn't show computer screens with crashing stock graphs. They showed the bright neon lights of the Golden Nugget Casino. They showed Tyrell sitting at a high-stakes blackjack table. They showed him laughing with a cocktail waitress. They showed him high-fiving a stranger. And the last photo, the one that landed right by his knee, showed him slumped over a roulette wheel, his head in his hands as the dealer raked away a mountain of chips. I pointed a shaking finger at the photos. "Is that your office, Tyrell? Is the dealer your business partner?" Tyrell stammered. "Dad, I can explain. I went there to try and win the money back after the crash." "Stop lying," I roared. My voice filled the room, making the crystal glasses in the cabinet rattle. I checked the timestamps. "Tyrell, you have been there for 3 days straight. You didn't lose 50,000 on crypto. You lost it on red and black. You gambled away your mortgage. You gambled away your savings. And now you want to gamble away my life's work." Delilah picked up one of the photos. She looked at it. Then she looked at me with pure hatred. "You had him followed, Arthur. You spied on your own son. He is an addict, Delilah," I shouted back. "And you are his dealer. Every time you give him money, you are handing him a loaded gun." "Well, not this time. The bank is closed." Courtney stepped forward. Her voice was sharp. "What do you mean the bank is closed?" I turned to her. "I mean exactly that. I went to the bank this morning, Courtney. While you were busy mixing powder into my milk, I was busy meeting with the branch manager. I showed him proof of suspicious activity. I showed him the coerced transfers. You did what." Courtney hissed, her face losing all color. "I froze the accounts," I said. "The joint checking, the savings, the investment portfolio, even the emergency fund. It is all locked down pending a fraud investigation. Not a single cent leaves the Robinson name without my physical presence and a biometric scan that I control." Tyrell scrambled to his feet. "You can't do that, Dad," he screamed. "That is my money too. I am your heir." "It is my money," I yelled, getting right in his face. "I earned it. I stood on an assembly line for 12 hours a day while you were wetting the bed. I saved every penny while you were buying fancy sneakers. I built this empire, and I will burn it to the ground before I let a gambling junkie and a gold-digging con artist spend another dime of it." The room went silent. The air crackled with tension. Tyrell looked like I had just punched him in the gut. Delilah looked terrified because without money she had no control. But Courtney didn't look scared. She looked demonic. The mask fell off. The sweet daughter-in-law facade cracked and crumbled into dust. Her lips curled back into a sneer that revealed the predator underneath. She laughed, a cold, hard sound that had no humor in it. "You stupid old man," Courtney spat. Her voice dropped an octave. It was raw and ugly. "You think you are so smart, don't you? You think freezing the money will stop us? Get out of my house," I said, pointing to the door. "No," Courtney stepped closer, ignoring my finger. "You are the one who is leaving Arthur, one way or another. You think that money makes you powerful. It makes you a target. You are just a walking wallet to us, Arthur. That is all you have ever been. A stingy, stubborn old man sitting on a pile of gold that you are too old to enjoy." Don't speak to your father like that, Tyrell mumbled, but there was no conviction in his voice. Shut up, Tyrell, Courtney snapped without looking at him. Look at him. He is pathetic. He thinks he can starve us out. Arthur, do you really think you are going to live long enough to unfreeze those accounts? You are 71 years old. You have a bad heart. You have diabetes. Accidents happen every day. Are you threatening me? I asked, narrowing my eyes. I am stating facts. Courtney smiled a smile that didn't reach her dead eyes. You are alone, Arthur. Delilah hates you. Delilah. Tyrell needs me more than he needs you. And me, I am the only one with the balls to do what needs to be done. You want to play hardball? Fine. We will play hardball. But remember this. You have to sleep sometime. And when you do, we will still be here. She turned to Tyrell and grabbed his arm, digging her nails into his suit jacket. Get up, we are leaving. But the money, Tyrell whined. We will get the money, Courtney promised, glaring at me over her shoulder. Every single cent. And we won't have to ask for it next time. She dragged Tyrell out of the room. Delilah stood there for a moment, torn between her husband and her son. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and loathing. You shouldn't have done that, Arthur, she whispered. You just signed your own death warrant. She turned and followed them, leaving me alone in the silent house. I looked down at the photos scattered on the floor. My son the gambler, my wife the traitor, my daughter-in-law the executioner. They were gone, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. I had cut off their supply. I had backed the rats into a corner. And as any engineer knows, a cornered rat is the most dangerous thing in the world. I locked the front door. I checked the windows. Then I went to the basement and opened the old gun safe. I took out the .38 special Michael had given me years ago. I checked the chamber. It was loaded, just like the war I had just started. I wasn't an ATM machine anymore. I was a soldier, and tonight I would sleep with one eye open. The morning after I cut off their money, I woke up with a feeling of dread sitting heavy in my chest. The house was too quiet. Tyrell and Courtney hadn't come back since I threw them out, but their absence felt more dangerous than their presence. It was the calm before the storm. I knew I couldn't stay in the house. I needed to see Cohen. We needed to finalize the trust fund for Michael's charity, and I needed to get the new will signed and notarized immediately. If something happened to me while the old will was still active, they would win. I grabbed my keys and headed for the garage. I didn't take the Cadillac today. I walked past it to the corner where my pride and joy slept under a canvas cover, my 1969 Ford Mustang Fastback, raven black with red leather interior. I had restored every inch of this car with my own hands. It was the one thing in my life that was purely mine. I turned the key and the V8 engine roared to life with a deep guttural rumble that shook the concrete floor. It was the sound of power, the sound of freedom. For a moment, as I backed out into the sunlight, I forgot about the poison in my milk and the thieves in my family. I was just a man and his machine. I drove out of the subdivision and headed towards the city. I took the scenic route through the winding roads of Stone Mountain. I needed the drive. I needed to clear my head. The air was crisp and I rolled the window down, letting the wind hit my face. I pushed the car a little harder, enjoying the torque as I accelerated up the incline. The road here was treacherous, sharp curves, steep drops, no guardrails in some places. It was a driver's road. I was approaching Dead Man's Curve. It was a sharp left hook that dropped into a steep decline. I had driven this road 1,000 times. I knew exactly when to brake. I took my foot off the gas and pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. The pedal didn't offer any resistance. It went straight to the floor with a hollow, useless thud. My heart stopped. I pumped the pedal again. 1, 2, 3 times. Nothing. The car was still accelerating, gaining speed from gravity. I was doing 50 miles an hour and the curve was coming up fast. If I didn't slow down, I would fly off the embankment and drop 200 feet into the ravine below. Panic flared hot and bright in my brain. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. I didn't scream. I didn't have time to scream. I shifted my focus. I was an engineer. I knew how machines worked, and I knew how to stop them when they broke. I slammed the gear stick from 4th down to 3rd. The engine screamed in protest, the RPM needle burying itself in the red zone. The car jerked violently as the transmission fought the speed. I lost some momentum, but not enough. The curve was 50 feet away. Second gear, I shouted to myself. I forced the stick into 2nd. The tires screeched, smoking as they lost traction for a second before gripping the asphalt. The rear end of the car fishtailed wildly. I steered into the skid, fighting to keep the heavy steel beast on the road. The cliff edge was rushing towards me. I could see the tops of the pine trees in the valley below. I reached for the emergency brake. I knew if I pulled it too hard at this speed, the car would flip. I had to feather it. I pulled the handle up slowly, listening to the cable groan. The rear wheels locked up. The car began to slide sideways. I was drifting towards the edge. The smell of burning rubber and overheated metal filled the cabin. I turned the wheel hard to the left, aiming for the ditch on the inside of the curve. It was better to crash into the mountain than to fly off it. "Brace," I yelled. The Mustang slammed into the drainage ditch. The front suspension collapsed with a sickening crunch. The car bounced violently, throwing me against the door. The seatbelt cut into my chest. Dust and gravel sprayed everywhere. The car slid for another 20 feet, grinding against the rock face before finally coming to a halt. Silence. The engine stalled. Steam hissed from the radiator. I sat there gasping for air, my hands still locked on the wheel in a death grip. My chest hurt. My neck hurt. But I was alive. I looked out the passenger window. The edge of the cliff was 5 feet away. 5 feet. That was the distance between life and death. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I pulled my phone out with shaking hands and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Jerome. He ran a private garage 3 miles from here. He was the only mechanic I trusted to touch my Mustang other than myself. "Bring the tow truck, Jerome," I rasped, "and bring your gun." An hour later, the Mustang was up on the lift in Jerome's garage. The shop was closed to the public. The metal shutters were pulled down. The only light came from the halogen lamp Jerome was holding as he inspected the undercarriage. Jerome was a big man, a Vietnam vet who didn't talk much. He walked out from under the lift, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. His face was grim. "You are a lucky man," Arthur Jerome said, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell me," I said, leaning against the workbench. My legs were still shaky. "It wasn't a failure," Jerome said. He walked over to the tool bench and picked up a piece of black rubber hose. He held it up to the light. It was the brake line. "Look at the cut," Jerome pointed. I leaned in. My eyes narrowed. If the line had burst from pressure, the edges would be jagged and torn. If it had worn out, it would be frayed. But this was clean, perfectly straight. "That was done with a pair of bolt cutters," Jerome said. "And not just any bolt cutters. It was done with a hydraulic crimper, the kind used to cut heavy-duty cables without pinching the line closed immediately. They cut it halfway, Arthur, just enough so that the first time you really slammed on the brakes, the pressure would finish the job." It was a time bomb. I stared at the black hose. A cold realization washed over me. This wasn't Tyrell. Tyrell couldn't change a tire if his life depended on it. He didn't know a brake line from a fuel line. This was Courtney. Suddenly, Michael's voice from the USB drive echoed in my head. Her father was a mechanic. She grew up in a garage. I had forgotten that detail. I had focused on the poison and the money. I had underestimated her skill set. She knew exactly where to cut. She knew exactly how to make it look like an accident. If I had gone over that cliff, the car would have been a mangled wreck. The fire would have destroyed the evidence. The police would have called it driver error, an old man losing control on a dangerous road. It was the perfect murder. I felt a surge of nausea. She had crawled under my car, maybe last night while I was sleeping, or maybe this morning before I woke up. She had laid on the cold concrete, looked at the machine I loved, and turned it into a coffin. "We need to call the cops," Jerome said, reaching for the landline. "Attempted murder, Arthur. This is serious." "No," I said sharply. "Put the phone down, Jerome." Jerome looked at me like I was crazy. "Arthur, they tried to kill you. Look at that cut. You want to let them walk away." "If we call the cops now, what happens?" I asked. "They come here. They take a report. They arrest who?" "Tyrell, Courtney. I have no proof she did it. There are no cameras in my garage. She will say it was a vandal. She will say I have enemies. She will hire a lawyer with the money she plans to inherit, and she will walk. And next time she won't cut the brakes. She will just shoot me in my sleep." "So what do you want to do?" Jerome asked, throwing the rag down. "I want to catch her," I said. "I want to catch her with blood on her hands. I want there to be no doubt. No lawyers. No bail. Just a cage." I took the piece of brake line from Jerome. I put it in my pocket next to the vial of fake insulin. My collection of evidence was growing. "I need you to fix the car, Jerome," I said. "But not the body. Leave the dents, leave the scratches, just fix the brakes and the suspension. I want it drivable, but I want it to look like a wreck. You are planning something crazy, aren't you? Jerome asked, shaking his head. I am planning a funeral, I said. I walked outside into the cool garage air and dialed Cohen. He answered on the first ring. Arthur, where are you? Cohen asked. I have the papers ready. Change of plans. Abraham, I said. My voice was steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. What happened? Cohen asked. They tried to kill me, I said. They cut the brakes on the Mustang. I am alive, but only barely. Silence on the other end. Then Cohen spoke, his voice trembling with rage. That is it. I am calling the district attorney. No, Abraham. I interrupted. Listen to me. If they want me dead, let's give them what they want. Arthur, what are you saying? Cohen asked. I am saying prepare the net, I said. I am going to make myself the bait. I am going to go home, and I am going to be broken. I am going to be the helpless invalid they want me to be. I am going to give them the perfect opportunity to finish the job. It is too dangerous, Cohen warned. If you go back there, they will kill you for real. Not if you are watching, I said. I need you to hire a private security team, former military. I want them in the woods behind my house. I want them watching every window. I want them listening to every sound. I will do it, Cohen said. But Arthur promised me one thing. Don't let them touch you. I looked at the scars on my hands. Scars from years of hard labor. Scars from building things that lasted. They won't touch me, Abraham, I said, because they are not dealing with Arthur the victim anymore. They are dealing with Arthur the ghost, and ghosts are very hard to kill. I hung up the phone. I looked at my wrecked car. It was battered. It was bruised. But the engine still ran, just like me. I was going back into the lion's den, but this time I wasn't bringing a whip. I was bringing the whole circus down on their heads. I would play the part of the crippled old man. I would let them think they had won, and right when they reached for the prize, I would snap the trap shut. Fix it, Jerome, I said, turning back to the garage. I have a performance to get to. I sat in my study with the curtains drawn tight against the afternoon sun. The house was silent, but it felt like the silence of a tomb. My hands were stained with grease from the garage, and my heart was still pounding from the near-death experience on the mountain pass. I had survived the brake cut. I had survived the poison. But I knew I was running out of luck. I needed answers. I needed to know exactly who I was fighting. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and took out the silver USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop and clicked on the file named The Widow. Michael appeared on the screen again. He looked worse in this video. His skin was gray and he was sitting in a hospital bed hooked up to an IV drip, but his eyes were sharp. They were the eyes of a detective who had solved one last case before the end. Arthur, if you are watching this, it means you survived the first wave, Michael rasped. Good. You always were a stubborn old mule, but now you need to know who is holding the knife. You think you know Courtney. You think she is just a greedy girl from the wrong side of the tracks who got lucky marrying your son. You are wrong. Courtney does not exist. Michael held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was a mugshot. A younger woman with dark hair, but the eyes were the same. Cold, blue, predatory. Her name is Sarah Jenkins, Michael said. She was born in Chicago. 10 years ago, she worked as a receptionist at a high-end auto body shop. That is where she met her first husband, a man named Earl Thomas. Earl was a lot like us, Arthur. He was 60 years old. He owned 3 shops. He was lonely. Sarah swept him off his feet. She dyed her hair. She changed her clothes. She became exactly what he wanted. A sweet, innocent girl who just needed someone to take care of her. I leaned closer to the screen. The woman in the photo looked different, but the smirk was identical to the one Courtney gave me when she handed me the poisoned wine. They were married for 6 months, Michael continued. Then Earl started getting sick. Dizziness, confusion. The doctors said it was early onset dementia. Does that sound familiar, Arthur? Earl signed over the business to her because he trusted her. He thought she was his nurse. 2 weeks after the papers were signed, Earl died in his sleep. The coroner ruled it a heart attack. But I dug up the old files, Arthur. I found the toxicology report that mysteriously went missing from the official record. Earl didn't have a heart attack. He had a massive overdose of digitalis. It stops the heart clean, And guess who had a prescription for heart medication? Not Earl. Sarah. Michael coughed violently, clutching his chest. The sound rattled through my laptop speakers. She walked away with $2 million, Michael wheezed. She moved to Atlanta. She changed her name to Courtney. She created a fake background, and she went hunting again. She found Tyrell at a casino. She saw a weak man with a rich father. You were the target from day one, Arthur. Tyrell was just the key to the front door. I stared at the black screen long after the video ended. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just greed. This was a profession. Courtney was a serial killer. She had done this before. She had perfected the art of the slow kill, the gaslighting, the isolation, the medical manipulation. She was dissecting my life with the precision of a surgeon. Then a new thought hit me, a thought so terrifying it made me forget about my own safety. Tyrell. I thought about my son, my foolish, weak disappointment of a son. I thought about how he looked at Courtney with puppy dog eyes. He thought he was her partner. He thought they were Bonnie and Clyde taking down the old man for a big score. He thought that once I was dead and the money was theirs, they would live happily ever after in a mansion. He was an idiot. If Courtney was Sarah Jenkins, if she had already killed one husband for money, why would she keep Tyrell around? Tyrell was a liability. He was a gambling addict. He was emotionally unstable. He was loud. And most importantly, he was expensive. If I died and Tyrell inherited the estate, Courtney would have to share it with him. She would have to watch him blow it all at the roulette table. That didn't fit her profile. A predator like that doesn't share. I realized with a sickening jolt that Tyrell was already dead. He just didn't know it yet. The moment I took my last breath, the clock would start ticking for him. Maybe she would stage a suicide. Maybe she would say he died of grief. Maybe she would plant drugs on him and let him overdose. It would be so easy. A grieving widow inheriting the fortune of both her husband and her father-in-law within a month. It was the perfect tragic story. I felt a strange emotion welling up inside me. It wasn't love exactly. Tyrell had betrayed me. He had tried to rob me. He had held my hand while they tried to crack my safe. But he was still my son. He was still the boy I taught to ride a bike. He was still the only blood I had left in this world. And I would be damned if I let this black widow eat him alive. I had to save him, not because he deserved it, but because she didn't deserve to win. But how? If I went to the police with just a video and an old mugshot, she would lawyer up. She would claim Michael was crazy. She would claim mistaken identity. And while the courts dragged on, she would find another way to finish us both off. Number one, I needed a confession. I needed her to feel so safe, so victorious, that she would brag about her crimes. I needed to become exactly what she wanted me to be. I picked up my phone and dialed Dr. Morrison. He was Michael's doctor, the man who had diagnosed the poison in Michael's blood too late. He was a good man, a man who carried the guilt of losing a patient he couldn't save. "Dr. Morrison," I said when he answered. "It is Arthur Robinson." Arthur Morrison's voice was filled with concern. "How are you? Did you watch the video?" "I did," I said. "And you were right. They tried to kill me today, doctor. They cut the brakes on my car." "I am calling the police," Morrison said instantly. "No, I stopped him. I have a better plan, but I need your help. I need you to break the Hippocratic Oath, or rather I need you to bend it to save a life." "What do you need?" Morrison asked. "I need a medical record," I said. "I am going to have an accident tonight, a fall down the stairs. I need you to be the attending physician. I need you to tell my family that the fall caused a massive cerebral hemorrhage." "You want to fake your death?" Morrison asked. "Not death," I said. "That is too easy. If I die, they get the money immediately. I want to fake paralysis. I want to be a vegetable, locked in syndrome. I want you to tell them that I can see and hear, but I cannot move or speak. I want you to tell them that I will require 24-hour care at home because the hospital can do nothing for me." "Arthur, that is incredibly dangerous," Morrison warned. "You will be at their mercy. They could suffocate you with a pillow." "They won't," I said confidently. "Not if you tell them that my brain activity is linked to a remote monitor. Tell them that if my heart stops or if I suffocate, the monitor will instantly alert the police and trigger an autopsy. Scare them. Make them believe that keeping me alive as a vegetable is the only way to avoid a murder investigation." There was a long silence on the line. I could hear Morrison breathing. He was weighing his ethics against the life of his friend's best friend. "I will do it," Morrison said finally. "For Michael." "When do we start?" "Tonight," I said. I hung up the phone. I looked around my study one last time. This was it, the point of no return. I was about to surrender my body to my enemies. I was about to lay still while they mocked me and spent my money. It would be the hardest thing I had ever done. To suffer their touch and not recoil. To hear their insults and not speak. I walked to the top of the stairs. The house was dark. I heard the front door open. They were coming back. I could hear Tyrell's voice whining about the heat. I could hear Delilah's keys jingling, and I could hear the click-clack of Courtney's heels on the hardwood floor. I took a deep breath. I positioned myself at the top of the landing. I wasn't going to actually throw myself down and break my neck. I was an engineer. I knew about angles. I grabbed the heavy oak banister. I made sure the rug at the top of the stairs was rucked up. I would stage the noise. I would stage the landing. I waited until they were in the foyer. "Hello, Arthur," Courtney called out, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "We are back. Did you miss us?" "Now." I kicked a heavy vase off the side table. It crashed onto the steps below, shattering loudly. I let out a strangled cry. I stomped my feet hard on the floorboards to mimic a tumbling body. Then I threw myself onto the mid-landing, sprawling out in an unnatural angle. I closed my eyes. I let my mouth hang open. I stopped moving. Dad Tyrell screamed. I heard running footsteps. "Oh my God, he fell!" Delilah shrieked. I lay there on the hardwood, feeling the vibration of their approach. My heart was calm. My mind was sharp. Arthur Robinson, the man, was gone. Arthur, the ghost, had arrived, and the haunting was about to begin. The first 24 hours of being a vegetable were the longest of my life. I lay there in the center of the living room on a rented hospital bed they had set up. Dr. Morrison had played his part perfectly. He told them I had suffered a massive brainstem stroke caused by the fall. He told them I was locked in, that I could see and hear everything, but I could not move a muscle, not even a finger. He told them I was trapped in my own body, and in a way I was, but not by a stroke. I was trapped by my own iron will. I had to become a statue made of flesh. I had to slow my breathing. I had to stare at the ceiling fans spinning round and round until my eyes burned and watered. I couldn't wipe the tears away. I had to let them roll down my cheeks into my ears. The humiliation began almost immediately. They didn't treat me like a sick father or husband. They treated me like a broken appliance that was taking up too much space. Delilah stripped me out of my clothes and put me in a hospital gown that was too small. She didn't close the curtains. She left me exposed while she complained about the smell of old age. Then came the feeding. It was noon when Courtney walked over. She held a bowl of gray lumpy oatmeal. It was cold. She didn't sit down. She stood over me, looking down with disgust. "Open up, Arthur," she said. Her voice was flat. She jammed the spoon into my mouth, hitting my teeth. I forced myself not to flinch. I let the cold mush slide down my throat. I almost gagged, but I swallowed it. "Good boy," she sneered. "See Tyrell. It is like feeding a dog, you just shovel it in." Tyrell was sitting on the sofa playing video games on his phone. The sound of the game was loud and annoying. Beep, beep, blast. He didn't even look up. "Just make sure he doesn't choke, Courtney." Tyrell mumbled. "If he chokes, the police have to come." Courtney laughed. A cruel, sharp sound. Would it really be so bad if he choked? It would save us a lot of trouble. She shoved another spoonful into my mouth. This one was too big. Oatmeal spilled down my chin onto my neck. It was sticky and uncomfortable. An itch started on my nose. A terrible, maddening itch. I wanted to scream. I wanted to reach up and scratch it until it bled. But I stared straight ahead. I focused on the cracks in the ceiling. I focused on the hatred burning in my gut. I let the oatmeal dry on my skin like a badge of honor. By evening, the true torture began. The doorbell rang. Delilah rushed to answer it. I heard her giggling. It was a sound I hadn't heard in 20 years. A high-pitched, girlish giggle that sounded grotesque coming from a woman who had just paralyzed her husband. "Come in, baby," she said. "He is in the living room, but don't worry. He can't do anything. He is just a piece of furniture now." A man walked into my field of vision. He was tall, younger than me, maybe 50. He was wearing a tight shirt and too much gold jewelry. He smelled of cheap cologne and tobacco. This was the man. This was the reason she wanted me dead. He walked right up to my bed. He looked down at me with a sneer. So this is the big bad wolf, huh? He doesn't look so tough now. Delilah wrapped her arms around his waist. He is done for Raymond. The doctor said he will never move again. We have the house, we have the money. Well, once we figure out how to get into that safe. Raymond leaned down. His face was inches from mine. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. He blew smoke from his cigarette right into my face. My eyes stung. I didn't blink. Nice house, he said, looking around. I always wanted a place with a fireplace, and that car in the garage, the Mustang. Can I drive it? Delilah kissed his cheek. Of course, baby. It is yours now. Everything is yours. I felt a rage so hot it almost melted my paralysis. This stranger was going to drive my Mustang. He was going to sleep in my bed. He was going to drink my wine. And my wife was handing it all to him on a silver platter while I was still warm. They sat on the sofa right in front of me. They opened a bottle of my best scotch. They toasted to my misfortune. They started talking about the future. We can't keep him here, Raymond said, swirling his drink. He creeps me out. Those eyes. It is like he is watching us. He is watching us, Delilah said dismissively. But he can't tell anyone. But you are right. He is a burden. Changing his diapers, feeding him. It is too much work. We should put him in a home, Raymond suggested. I know a place in South Atlanta, Shady Pines. It is cheap. The state pays for it. They stick them in a room and forget about them. He won't last 6 months. Delilah nodded thoughtfully. That is a good idea. We can sell the house, move to a condo in Buckhead and dump him there. We can tell the neighbors it was for his own good, that he needed specialized care. I listened to them plan my disposal. They were going to throw me away like a bag of trash. Shady Pines was a death camp. Everyone knew it. It was where people went to die of bed sores and neglect. And they were going to use my own money, the money I broke my back for, to live in luxury while I rotted. But then the front door opened again. It was Courtney and Tyrell, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Courtney walked in and saw Raymond. She didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed. Who is this? She asked, pointing a manicured finger at the gigolo. Delilah stood up, adjusting her dress. This is Raymond. He is a friend. Courtney laughed. A friend? You brought your boyfriend here while your husband is lying right there. You are sloppy, Delilah. Very sloppy. Raymond stood up, puffing out his chest. Hey, watch your mouth, little girl. I am part of this family now. Courtney walked right up to him. She was half his size, but she terrified him. I could see him shrink back. You are a leech, she said calmly. And we don't need any more leeches. We have enough problems. She turned to Tyrell. Tell them, Tyrell. Tell them the bad news. Tyrell looked sick. He was pale and sweating. He looked at me, then looked away. We can't access the accounts, he stammered. The bank called. The freeze is absolute. They need a biometric scan and a voice confirmation from Dad to unlock it. Even with the power of attorney, they are suspicious because of the amount. They said there is a flag on the account for potential elder abuse. Delilah dropped her glass. It shattered on the floor. What does that mean? She shrieked. It means we are broke. It means, Courtney interrupted, her voice icy, that putting him in a nursing home won't work. If he goes to a home, the state takes control of his assets to pay for his care. We get nothing. The house gets a lien on it. The accounts stay frozen until he dies, which could take years. Silence. The kind of silence that screams. Raymond looked nervous. Look, I didn't sign up for this. I thought there was cash. Shut up, Courtney snapped. She turned to look at me. She walked over to the bed. She stared into my unblinking eyes. She was searching for something. Fear, maybe. Or consciousness. I gave her nothing. I was a void.
So what do we do?
Delilah asked, her voice trembling. We can't stay here with no money. The loan sharks are calling Tyrell every hour. We have to liquidate the asset, Courtney said. Her voice was devoid of humanity. What asset? Raymond asked. The house, Courtney said. And him. She gestured to my motionless body. We have a $2 million life insurance policy. It pays out double for accidental death. And we have a house insurance policy that covers fire damage. Tyrell gasped. Courtney, you can't mean... I mean exactly that, Courtney said. She didn't whisper. She said it loud and clear. Tonight, there is a storm coming. The weather report says heavy thunder and lightning. Perfect cover. No, Tyrell cried. That is murder, Courtney. burning him alive. I can't do that. You won't have to, Courtney said soothingly, stroking his cheek. You will be at the movies. You and your mother and Raymond here. You will have rock-solid alibis. I will stay behind. I will say I was taking care of him. I will start a grease fire in the kitchen. I will leave a candle burning near the curtains. It will look like an accident. I will try to save him, of course. I will drag him to the stairs, but sadly the smoke will be too much. The poor paralyzed man couldn't run. It is tragic, really. I lay there and listened to my own execution being planned. My heart was hammering so hard I thought my chest would explode. Burning alive. It was the worst way to go. The pain. The terror. Delilah looked at Raymond. Raymond looked at the door. $2 million, Courtney said. Split 3 ways. Raymond, you can buy a Porsche. Delilah, you can buy that condo. Tyrell, we can pay off the debt and start fresh. No more old man. No more lectures. No more waiting. Delilah looked at me. She looked at the man she had married 40 years ago. Then she looked at Raymond. Do it, she said. My soul cracked. My wife had just signed my death warrant. She chose money and a cheap hustler over my life.
Good, Courtney smiled. It was the smile of the devil himself. Pack a bag. Make it look like you are going out for a late dinner. Leave the back door unlocked. They started moving. The energy in the room shifted from despair to frantic excitement. They were packing up. They were laughing. They were already spending the blood money. Courtney leaned over me one last time. Her breath smelled of mints. You hear that, Arthur? She whispered. You are going to have a hot date tonight. I know you can hear me. I saw your pupil dilate when I mentioned the fire. You are in there, aren't you? She patted my cheek. Don't worry, she cooed. It will be fast. The smoke usually gets you before the flames do. You should have just signed the check, Arthur. You made me do this. She straightened up and walked away. All right, everyone out. Tyrell, give me the lighter fluid from the garage. I was alone. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick, tick, tick. It was 7 p.m. The storm was starting outside. I could hear the thunder rolling in the distance. Or maybe it was the sound of my own rage. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was a vegetable. They didn't know that under the blanket my hand was slowly clenching into a fist. They didn't know that my security team was in the woods watching the thermal cameras. And they didn't know that I had a pistol taped under the mattress right by my hand. I closed my eyes and prayed, not for salvation, but for aim. Lord, let my hand be steady. Let my aim be true. Because tonight the devil is coming to my bedroom and I intend to send her back to hell. The storm outside was not just rain and wind, it was a symphony of violence that perfectly matched the horror unfolding inside my living room. Thunder rattled the window panes, shaking the glass in their frames like teeth chattering in a skull. Lightning flashed every few seconds, illuminating the room in harsh strobe light bursts of blue and white that made the shadows jump and dance. I lay perfectly still on the hospital bed, my eyes fixed on the ceiling. But my peripheral vision was wide open. I was watching my son, my only child, the boy I had taught to fish, the boy I had held when he scraped his knees. Now he was standing over me holding a bright red plastic gas can. Tyrell was vibrating. That is the only way to describe it. He was shaking so hard the gas can was rattling against his leg. He wasn't wearing a mask. He wasn't wearing gloves. He was wearing his expensive suit now ruined with sweat and spilled whiskey. In his other hand, he gripped a bottle of Jack Daniels by the neck. He took a long, desperate pull from the bottle, the amber liquid spilling down his chin, mixing with his tears. He was crying. Great heaving sobs that were swallowed up by the thunder. It was pathetic. It was the most heartbreaking thing I had ever seen. My son was not a killer by nature. He was a coward. And cowards are dangerous because they will do anything to stop being afraid, even if it means burning their own father alive. Do it, Tyrell. A voice cut through the darkness. It was Courtney. She was standing in the shadows of the hallway. I can't, Tyrell whimpered, lowering the can. Dad is looking at me. Look at his eyes, Courtney. He knows. He knows what I am doing. Courtney stepped into the light. She looked like an angel of death. She was wearing a black raincoat and blue surgical gloves. Her face was dry. Her eyes were clear. She walked over to Tyrell and slapped him hard across the face. The sound was sharp like a pistol crack. "He doesn't know anything, you idiot," she hissed. "He is a vegetable. His brain is mush. Those are just reflexes. Now pour the gas. We have to be out of here in 10 minutes. The neighbors will think the lightning started the fire." Tyrell took another drink of whiskey. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked at me one last time. I saw him mouth the words, "I am sorry, Dad." Then he unscrewed the cap. The smell hit me instantly. Sharp, pungent, chemical. The smell of destruction. Tyrell started in the corner by the curtains. He splashed the gasoline on the heavy velvet fabric. Then he moved to the bookshelf. He splashed it on the family photo albums. He was erasing our history before he erased me. He moved closer to the bed. He was sobbing louder now, a guttural sound of pure misery. He tipped the can. A stream of pinkish liquid splashed onto the rug just inches from my bed frame. He was circling me, creating a ring of fire, a funeral pyre. He stumbled, his foot catching on the edge of the rug. He almost fell on top of me. I smelled the whiskey on his breath mixing with the gasoline fumes. It was a nauseating cocktail of vice and violence. He regained his balance and splashed the last of the fuel on the hardwood floor leading to the kitchen. A fuse. He was making a fuse. "Finish it," Courtney commanded, checking her watch. "Stop crying and finish it." Tyrell threw the empty can into the corner. It clattered loudly. He stood there swaying slightly, looking at the destruction he had prepared. He looked like a little boy who had broken a vase and was waiting for a punishment that would never come. Because in his mind, the only person who could punish him was the man he was about to incinerate. While Tyrell was falling apart, Courtney was methodically building the perfect crime scene. She moved through the house with the precision of a surgeon. She didn't waste a single movement. She walked to the kitchen and turned on the gas stove. She didn't light it. She just let the gas hiss out, filling the room with another layer of explosive potential. Then she took a frying pan, poured cooking oil into it, and set it on the burner. She turned the heat up to high. It was the classic grease fire setup. The oil would overheat, catch fire, ignite the curtains, spread to the gasoline-soaked rug, and finally consume the helpless invalid in the living room. She took a cloth from her pocket and began wiping down every surface Tyrell had touched. The doorknobs, the gas can, the whiskey bottle. She was erasing him from the scene. She was setting him up, I realized. If the fire didn't destroy everything, the police would find Tyrell's fingerprints on the gas can, but not hers. She was leaving herself a back door. If things went wrong, she could claim Tyrell did it all in a drunken rage and she tried to stop him. She was evil in a way that defied comprehension. She walked over to where I lay. She looked down at me. She didn't slap me. She didn't mock me. She just adjusted my blanket. She pulled it up to my chin. It was a gesture of mock tenderness that made my blood boil. "You know, Arthur," she whispered, bending close to my ear. "I almost respect you. You held out longer than I thought. Most men would have just signed the check. But you had to be the hero. You had to be the strong patriarch. Well, look where it got you. You are going to die in a puddle of your own son's incompetence." She stood up and peeled off her gloves, putting them in her pocket. She looked at Tyrell, who was standing by the back door, shaking like a leaf. "Go to the car, Tyrell," she ordered. "Wait for me. Keep the engine running." Tyrell looked at me one last time. "Goodbye, Dad," he whispered. Then he turned and ran out into the rain. Courtney was alone with me now. The storm was reaching its crescendo outside. Thunder boomed directly overhead, shaking the floorboards. The smell of gasoline was so thick I could taste it. It burned my throat. My lungs were screaming for fresh air, but I forced myself to take shallow breaths. I couldn't cough. Not yet. Courtney reached into her pocket and pulled out a silver Zippo lighter. I recognized it. It was Tyrell's. She was going to use his lighter to start the fire. Another piece of evidence against him. She flipped the lid open with a metallic clink. She spun the flint wheel. Sparks flew. A small yellow flame danced in the darkness. She held the flame up, admiring it. It reflected in her eyes, making them look like pools of burning oil. She wasn't just doing this for money. She enjoyed it. She enjoyed the power. She was a predator at the top of the food chain, and I was just prey. She walked towards the kitchen, towards the trail of gasoline Tyrell had laid. "Rest in peace, Arthur," she said. My hand was under the blanket, resting on my chest. My fingers were wrapped around the cold steel handle of the .38 Special. I had taped it to the mattress frame earlier that day when Delilah was in the shower. I had sliced a hole in the mattress so I could grab it without being seen. My thumb clicked the safety off. It was a silent movement masked by the thunder. I was counting in my head. 1001, 1002. I needed her to commit. I needed her to be in the act. I needed the jury to see that there was no other choice. But more than that, I was waiting for the signal, the tiny vibration in the watch on my wrist, the signal from the security team in the woods. They were watching through the thermal scopes. They saw the heat of the oil pan. They saw the heat of the lighter. They were moving in. But they were still outside, and the fire was inside. Courtney lowered the lighter towards the gasoline-soaked rug. The flame jumped. It caught the fumes first. A blue wave of fire rippled across the floor, moving faster than I expected. It raced towards the curtains. It raced towards the bookshelf, and it raced towards me. Courtney smiled and turned to run. That was the mistake. She turned her back on a ghost. I threw the blanket off. I didn't sit up slowly. I erupted from that bed like a man possessed. The adrenaline that had been building for 24 hours exploded in my muscles. I ignored the stiffness in my joints. I ignored the pain in my back. Courtney. I roared. My voice was louder than the thunder. It was the voice of Judgment Day. She spun around. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth fell open. For the first time since I met her, the mask slipped completely. She wasn't cool. She wasn't calculated. She was terrified. She was looking at a dead man walking. The fire was climbing the curtains now. The smoke was filling the room. The heat was intense on my face. But I didn't feel it. All I felt was the cold steel of the gun in my hand and the burning desire for justice. "Drop it!" I screamed, leveling the gun at her chest. She froze. The lighter fell from her hand, hitting the floor, but the damage was done. The fire was alive, and so was I. The trap was sprung. The game was over, and the real violence was just beginning. The fire started as a low hiss, then bloomed into a roar. I watched the blue flames dance across the gasoline-soaked rug, moving with terrifying speed towards the heavy velvet drapes. The heat hit my face instantly, a physical slap that smelled of chemicals and impending death. Courtney had already turned her back on me, walking towards the kitchen with the arrogance of a woman who believes she has already won. Tyrell was by the door, fumbling with the handle, his hands shaking so hard he couldn't get it open. He was sobbing, looking back at the fire he had just ignited. I didn't just wake up. I erupted. For 24 hours I had been a statue, a prisoner in my own body, forcing every muscle to remain dormant while they poked and prodded and mocked me. Now I unleashed all that stored kinetic energy in a single violent motion. I threw the heavy wool blanket aside with a roar that tore from my throat like a wild animal. It wasn't the sound of an old man. It was the sound of a father who had been pushed too far. I rolled off the bed, my feet hitting the hardwood floor. The pain in my stiff joints was sharp, but the adrenaline flooded my system, numbing everything but the rage. Tyrell heard the noise. He turned around, his eyes widening until they looked like saucers. He saw his paralyzed father standing tall amidst the rising smoke. He saw the demon he thought he had buried. "Dad," he stammered, his voice a high-pitched squeak of terror. I didn't speak. I moved. I covered the distance between the bed and the door in 3 long strides. Tyrell tried to raise his hands in a pathetic defensive gesture, but he was slow. He was drunk on whiskey and fear. I wasn't. I planted my left foot and drove my right boot into the center of his chest. It was a kick I had learned in the Detroit shipyards 50 years ago, a move designed to stop a man cold. The impact lifted him off his feet. He flew backward, hitting the hallway wall with a sickening thud. The air left his lungs in a wet wheeze. He slid down the wall to the floor, clutching his chest, gasping for breath, looking up at me as if I were a ghost. I stood over him, breathing hard, the heat of the fire warming my back. "Stay down, boy," I growled, my voice rough from disuse. "If you move, I will break every bone in your body." Tyrell curled into a fetal position, weeping into the carpet. He was done. He was never the threat. He was just the tool. The real threat was behind me. I heard the click of heels stopping abruptly. The silence from the kitchen was louder than the fire. I turned slowly. Courtney was standing there. The smile had vanished from her face, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock. She looked at the empty bed. She looked at Tyrell groaning on the floor. And then she looked at me. Her brain was trying to process the impossible. The vegetable was walking. The victim was fighting back. "You," she whispered. "You were faking." I took a step towards her. The fire was growing, climbing the walls, now eating the wallpaper. The smoke was gathering at the ceiling, a dark gray cloud that swirled like a storm. "You missed a spot cleaning up Courtney," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You forgot to check if the heart was still beating with rage." Her shock lasted only a second. Then the predator took over. She realized there was no way out. The front door was locked. I was blocking the hallway. The fire was behind me. She was trapped. A cornered rat will fight a lion if it has to. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She reached into the pocket of her raincoat. I thought she was going for a phone. I was wrong. Her hand came out holding a switchblade. The blade snapped open with a deadly click, glinting orange in the firelight. It was a wicked thing, a tool of her trade. "Get out of my way, old man," she hissed, crouching low. She lunged. She was fast, much faster than I expected. She aimed the knife low for my stomach, intending to gut me, but she made a fatal mistake. She underestimated the old man. She saw gray hair and wrinkles. She didn't see the years of hard labor that had turned my hands into vices. She didn't see the reflexes honed by a lifetime of survival. I didn't try to dodge. I stepped into her guard. As her arm came up, I caught her wrist with my left hand. My grip was iron. I squeezed. I felt the bones in her wrist grind together. She screamed a sound of pain and frustration. She tried to claw at my eyes with her free hand, her nails raking across my cheek, drawing blood. The pain was sharp, but I didn't let go. I twisted her arm behind her back, forcing it up towards her shoulder blades. I used her own momentum against her, slamming her face first into the wall next to the fireplace. The knife clattered to the floor. She struggled, kicking backward, trying to stomp on my feet. She was like a wildcat, spitting and cursing. "Let me go, you dead piece of trash," she screamed. "I will kill you. I will burn this whole house down with you in it." I leaned in close, pressing my forearm against the back of her neck, pinning her to the wall. The heat from the fire was intense, now sweat pouring down my face, mixing with the blood from my cheek. "You already tried that, Courtney," I whispered into her ear, "and you failed." I reached into my waistband and pulled out the .38 Special. The metal was cold against my palm, a stark contrast to the inferno around us. I grabbed her by the hair, pulling her head back so she had to look at me. I pressed the barrel of the gun against her temple. The cold steel against her skin froze her instantly. She stopped kicking. She stopped screaming. She went rigid. She knew what a gun felt like. She knew that a single twitch of my finger would end her life. "Hello, daughter-in-law," I said, my voice low and dark. "Daddy is awake, and he is very, very disappointed. Please." She whimpered, her facade finally cracking completely. "Arthur, please." It was Tyrell. "He made me do it, don't I?" shouted, jamming the gun harder against her head. "Don't you dare lie to me. Not now. Not at the end. You orchestrated this. You poisoned me. You cut my brakes. You tried to burn me alive in the house I built. Own it. Show me some dignity before you go to prison." She started to cry, shaking uncontrollably. But these weren't fake tears like Tyrell's. These were tears of defeat. She realized the game was over. The chess master had been checkmated by the pawn. We stood there for a moment, a tableau of violence illuminated by the flames, an old man holding a gun to a weeping woman while his son lay broken on the floor. The smoke was getting thicker, making it hard to breathe. The fire alarm finally went off, a piercing shriek that added to the chaos. Then the world exploded. The front door didn't open. It shattered. A battering ram hit the oak with the force of a freight train, sending splinters flying across the foyer. Police get down on the ground. Men in black tactical gear poured into the room like a flood. They were shouting orders, their voices amplified by the adrenaline of the raid. Flashlights cut through the smoke, blinding beams that swept across the carnage. "Drop the weapon. Drop it now." I didn't panic. I knew they were coming. I slowly took my finger off the trigger. I raised my hands, keeping the gun pointed at the ceiling. I stepped back from Courtney, leaving her slumped against the wall. "I am the homeowner," I shouted, my voice cutting through the noise. "That is the arsonist." 2 officers were on Courtney in a second. They didn't treat her gently. They spun her around, slamming her face back into the wall she had just been pinned to. I heard the distinct metallic ratchet sound of handcuffs tightening. "You are hurting me," she screamed. "I have rights. You have the right to remain silent," an officer shouted back, hauling her up. Another team was on Tyrell. He didn't resist. He just held his hands out, weeping softly as they cuffed him. He looked at me as they dragged him past. He looked small, broken, a child who had gotten lost in the dark. "Dad," he whispered. I turned away. I couldn't look at him. Not yet. "Fire department coming through," a voice bellowed. Firefighters in heavy yellow gear pushed past the police, dragging thick hoses. They sprayed a wall of white foam onto the living room rug. The fire hissed and fought back for a moment, sending up a cloud of acrid steam before dying down into a smoldering black mess. They had arrived just in time. The wall was scorched, the curtains were gone, but the structure held. My house was wounded, but it was still standing. A tall man in a suit walked through the broken door. It was Cohen. He looked at the scene, the smoke, the water on the floor, the shattered glass. Then he looked at me, standing in the middle of it all, holding a gun, looking like a warrior from an ancient myth. He walked over and gently took the gun from my hand. "It is over, Arthur," he said softly. "We got them." The cameras recorded everything. I looked at my hands. They were shaking now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. I watched the police drag Courtney out the front door. She was still screaming curses, still trying to fight. I watched them take Tyrell. He hung his head in shame. I looked at the blackened spot on the floor where they had tried to burn me. I looked at the hospital bed that had been my prison. I took a deep breath of the smoky air. It tasted terrible, but it also tasted like victory. "I am alive," I whispered to the empty room. The paramedics rushed in, trying to get me to sit down, trying to check my vitals. I waved them away. I walked to the window and watched the flashing red and blue lights painting the street outside. The neighbors were gathering on their lawns, watching the spectacle. Let them look, I thought. Let them see. Let them see that Arthur Robinson didn't go gentle into that good night. Let them see that when you try to burn a man who has walked through hell, you only make him stronger. The fluorescent lights of the police interrogation room hummed with a low buzzing sound that seemed to drill right into my skull. I stood behind the one-way glass watching the woman who had tried to burn me alive sit across from Detective Miller. Courtney was handcuffed to the metal table. She had lost her shoes in the struggle, and her expensive dress was stained with soot and drywall dust. But her face was still defiant. She sat with her chin up, staring at the detective with a look of bored contempt, as if this were all just a minor inconvenience that her lawyer would clear up before brunch. I watched her, and I felt a cold knot of hatred tighten in my stomach. But this wasn't about me anymore. This was about Michael. The detective opened a thick file folder and slid a photograph across the steel table. It wasn't a photo of my house. It wasn't a photo of the gas can. It was a photo of a small orange prescription bottle. "Do you recognize this, Courtney?" The detective asked, his voice calm and level. Courtney barely glanced at it. "I assume it is Arthur's medicine," she said. "I already told you I was helping him manage his prescriptions. He is old. He gets confused." The detective leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "This isn't Arthur's medicine, Courtney. This bottle was found in the false bottom of your jewelry box during the search of your apartment an hour ago. The label says it is cyclophosphamide. That is a chemotherapy drug. It was prescribed to Michael Evans 4 months ago." I saw Courtney's eye twitch. Just a fraction of a millimeter. It was the first crack in her armor. "So what?" she scoffed. "Michael was a family friend. Maybe I picked it up for him once." The detective shook his head slowly. "The lab just tested the contents of that bottle, Courtney. It is full. Every single pill is accounted for. But Michael died 2 months ago. He died because his cancer aggressively spread. And do you know why it spread so fast? Because he wasn't taking his medication. He was taking what you swapped it with." The detective slid another photo across the table. It showed a bag of sugar pills, cheap placebo tablets available online. "We found the receipt for the sugar pills in your email trash folder," the detective continued. "You switched them. You went to Michael's house to help him clean, and you swapped his life-saving medication for candy. You watched him get sicker and sicker. You watched him die in agony, knowing that the medicine that could have saved him was sitting in your jewelry box like a trophy." I pressed my hand against the cold glass. My knees felt weak. I knew she was evil, but this was beyond evil. This was demonic. She hadn't just poisoned Michael with arsenic. She had stolen his hope. She had taken away his chance to fight. She wanted him dead because he was the only one smart enough to see through her mask. Courtney stayed silent, but her face had gone pale. "That is murder one, Courtney," the detective said. "Premeditated, malicious. And in the state of Georgia, that puts the death penalty on the table." Courtney looked up. Her blue eyes were wide now. I didn't do it, she whispered. You can't prove I switched them. Michael was confused. He probably mixed them up himself. The detective smiled a cold, hard smile. We found your fingerprints on the inside of the bottle cap, Courtney. On the inside. You are done. I turned away from the glass. I couldn't look at her anymore. I needed to see the other one. I walked down the hallway to the second interrogation room. This one smelled different. It smelled of vomit and sweat. My son Tyrell was sitting there, his head in his hands, his body shaking so hard the chair was vibrating against the floor. He looked up when the door opened. When he saw me standing there next to the detective, he let out a sob that sounded like a wounded animal. "Dad," he cried, reaching out with his cuffed hands. "Dad, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know she was going to light the fire. She told me we were just going to scare you." I walked into the room. I pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down. I looked at the boy I had raised, the boy who used to follow me around the garage holding my tools. "You didn't know about the fire?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Okay, Tyrell, maybe I believe that. But did you know about Earl?" Tyrell wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Earl? Who is Earl?" I slid the mugshot of Courtney's first husband across the table. "This is Earl Thomas," I said. "He was her first husband. He died 6 months after they got married. Heart attack. Or so they thought. She killed him, Tyrell, just like she killed Michael, and just like she was going to kill me." Tyrell stared at the photo. His mouth fell open. "No," he whispered. "No, Courtney isn't. She loves me. We are partners." I laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound. "Partners? Tyrell, look at yourself. You are the patsy. You are the fall guy. Why do you think she made you buy the gasoline? Why do you think she used your lighter? Why do you think she made you handle the gas can without gloves?" Tyrell blinked his mind, trying to process the betrayal. "She was setting you up, son," I said, leaning in close. "If I had died in that fire, she would have told the police that you did it in a drunken rage. She would have played the grieving widow and the terrified sister-in-law. She would have inherited everything, and you would be sitting on death row." Tyrell started to hyperventilate. He grabbed his chest, gasping for air. She said we were going to go to Paris," he stammered. "She said we were going to start a business. She was going to kill you too, Tyrell," I said brutally. "Once she had the money, do you really think she would split it with a gambling addict? You were just a loose end." Tyrell broke. He didn't just cry, he shattered. He put his head on the table and howled. It was the sound of a man realizing that his entire life was a lie, that the woman he worshipped was a monster who viewed him as nothing more than livestock to be slaughtered. "I want to confess," he screamed, lifting his head. His eyes were wild. "I want a deal. I will tell you everything. I will tell you about the fake will. I will tell you about the poison in the milk. I will tell you about the brake lines. I saw her in the garage, Dad. I saw her with the bolt cutters. She told me she was just fixing a loose cable." I believed her. God help me, I believed her. The detective stepped forward, clicking his pen. "Start talking, Tyrell. Start from the beginning." I stood up and walked out. I couldn't listen to it. I couldn't listen to my son admit that he watched his wife sabotage my car and did nothing. He was alive, but he was dead to me. The son I loved had died a long time ago. This man was just a stranger with my last name. I walked down the long corridor to the holding cells. The guard nodded at me and buzzed the heavy steel door open. Courtney was sitting on a narrow bench in a solitary cell. She had been processed. The expensive dress was gone, replaced by a bright orange jumpsuit. It clashed with her pale skin. She stood up when she saw me. She walked to the bars, wrapping her fingers around the cold metal. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked hateful. "You think you won? Don't you, old man?" she hissed. I stood just out of her reach. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. "You got lucky," she spat. "That is all. You got lucky that Michael was paranoid. You got lucky that Tyrell is a weak little coward. If I had done it myself from the beginning, you would be ash right now." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drive. I held it up so she could see it. "It wasn't luck, Courtney," I said. "It was Michael." She frowned. "Michael is dead." I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in months. "Michael knew you were stealing his meds," I said. "He knew it 3 weeks before he died. He saw you take the bottle, but he didn't stop you." Courtney looked confused. "Why? Why would he let me kill him?" "Because he needed proof," I said.
He knew that if he accused you, then you would just disappear. You would run away and find another victim. Michael sacrificed himself to catch you. He marked the bottom of that chemo bottle with invisible ink. He put a tracker in the cap. He let you take it so that when the police finally raided your house, they would find the smoking gun. Courtney took a step back. Her face crumbled. He knew. He played you, Courtney, I said. You thought you were the hunter, but you were the prey the whole time. Michael gave his life to make sure you never hurt anyone else. He beat you from the grave. Courtney sank onto the bench. She looked small now. The monster had been stripped of its power. She was just a common criminal who had underestimated two old men. Enjoy the cage, Courtney, I said, turning to walk away. You are going to be in there for a very long time. Wait, she called out, her voice desperate. Arthur, wait. Tyrell, tell Tyrell I love him. Tell him not to testify. I stopped. I didn't look back. Tyrell is already talking, I said. And as for love, I don't think you know the meaning of the word. I walked out of the cell block. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind me with a finality that echoed in my soul. It was over. The fire was out. The rats were caught. But as I walked out into the cool night air, I didn't feel happy. I felt a deep, aching hollowness. I had justice, but I had lost everything else. My friend, my son, my family. All that was left was the truth. And the truth was a heavy burden to carry alone. It was 3 a.m. when the final act of this tragedy began. The police cruisers had moved around the corner, leaving the driveway empty. The fire trucks were gone, leaving behind only the smell of wet ash and the charred remains of my living room curtains. I sat on the front porch in my old rocking chair, the one I used to sit in while watching Tyrell play catch in the yard 30 years ago. I was wrapped in a blanket, not because I was cold, but because the fire had burned away the last warmth I held for the woman I had married. I held a mug of cold coffee in my hands and waited. I knew she would come back. She had to come back to play the part of the grieving widow. She needed the neighbors to see her collapse in agony. She needed the fire marshal to record her tears. She needed to secure the insurance payout. Headlights swept across the lawn, cutting through the darkness. It was her car. She was driving fast, too fast for a residential street. She slammed on the brakes, screeching to a halt at the foot of the driveway. She didn't even turn the engine off. She threw the door open and stumbled out. It was a performance worthy of Broadway. She was wearing a black dress, having already changed out of her dinner clothes into something more appropriate for a funeral. She had even messed up her hair and smeared her mascara to look distraught. Arthur, she screamed, running towards the house. Arthur, my baby, where are you? She fell to her knees on the grass right in front of the neighbor's house, ensuring Mrs. Higgins across the street would see. Oh God, please tell me he is safe. Please tell me I didn't lose him. I watched her from the shadows of the porch. I watched her crawl on the grass, sobbing loudly. It was disgusting. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the $2 million she thought she had just earned. She stood up and ran towards the front door. She saw the broken frame where the SWAT team had rammed it in. She gasped, covering her mouth. Oh my God, she wailed. The fire, the door, it is all gone. She rushed up the steps. She didn't see me sitting in the corner. Her eyes were fixed on the blackened hallway inside. She stepped over the threshold, her heels clicking on the broken glass. She walked into the foyer, looking around at the foam and the water damage. She took a deep breath. And then I saw it. The change. As soon as she thought she was alone inside the house, the sobbing stopped instantly. Her shoulders straightened. She wiped the fake tears from her cheeks with a quick, ruthless motion. She looked at the burnt living room and a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. She thought it was done. She thought I was ash. Finally, she whispered to the empty room. Finally, it is over. I let the silence hang for a moment longer. I took a sip of my cold coffee. Hello, Delilah, I said. My voice was quiet, but in the silent house it sounded like a gunshot. Delilah spun around so fast she almost lost her balance. She squinted into the shadows of the porch. I slowly stood up and stepped into the light of the hallway. I wasn't a ghost. I was flesh and blood. I was standing tall on my own 2 feet, no longer the paralyzed invalid she had mocked just hours before. She froze. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her eyes bulged. All the color drained from her face, leaving her looking gray and old. Arthur, she stammered. You are alive. I walked past her into the living room, kicking a piece of burnt wood out of my way. I am alive, Delilah, I said calmly. I am sorry to disappoint you.
I know you were already picking out the curtains for your new condo." She blinked rapidly, her brain trying to recalibrate. She switched gears instantly. The shark became the victim again. She rushed towards me, throwing her arms open. "Oh, Arthur, thank God," she cried, trying to hug me. "I was so worried. We were at the movies and I got a terrible feeling. I told Tyrell we had to come back. When I saw the smoke, I thought I lost you." I caught her wrists before she could touch me. I held them tight. My grip was hard. I looked down at her hands, the hands that had mixed my medicine, the hands that had caressed my face while plotting my death. "Stop it, Delilah," I said. "The show is over. The curtain has fallen. There is no audience here. Just you and me and the truth." She tried to pull away, but I held her fast. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling with fake confusion. "You are hurting me, Arthur. I am your wife. You are a stranger," I said, pushing her away. "My wife died a long time ago. My wife wouldn't have left me paralyzed in a burning house. My wife wouldn't have brought her lover into my home to drink my scotch while I lay dying." She went still. The mention of the lover hit her hard. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered. I walked over to the coffee table, which had miraculously survived the fire. On it sat a stack of photos. I picked them up. I walked back to her and fanned them out in front of her face. "This is what I mean, Delilah," I said. The photos showed everything. Delilah and Raymond at a hotel. Delilah and Raymond looking at condos in Buckhead. Delilah giving Raymond my cash outside a pawn shop. She stared at the pictures. She couldn't deny them. They were high-definition proof of her betrayal. "You had me followed," she hissed. Her voice changed. The sweetness was gone. The venom was back. "I had everyone followed," I said. "I know about Raymond. I know about the plan to dump me at Shady Pines. I know about the $2 million policy. And I know that tonight, while you were supposedly at the movies, you were actually at a motel with him, waiting for the call that I was dead." She glared at me. "So what?" She spat. "So what if I have a boyfriend? You are an old, boring man, Arthur. You never wanted to travel. You never wanted to spend money. You just wanted to sit in this house and rot. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to live." "You deserve to live?" I asked, my voice rising for the first time. "So you decided that my death was the price of your happiness. You decided to murder me for a condo and a Porsche." "It wasn't murder," she screamed. "It was mercy. You were sick. You were miserable. We were doing you a favor." I laughed. A cold, hollow sound. "Mercy. Is that what you call poisoning my insulin? Is that what you call cutting my brakes? Is that what you call lighting a fire while I was trapped in a bed?" She took a step back. "I didn't light the fire," she said quickly. "That was Courtney. And Tyrell. I wasn't even here. You can't prove I knew about it. I have an alibi." I shook my head, looking at her with pure pity. "You still don't get it, do you? You think you are smarter than everyone else. But you are just the last rat in the trap." I pointed to the kitchen. "Courtney and Tyrell are already in custody, Delilah," I said. "They have been at the station for 2 hours. And guess what? They are talking." She went pale again. "Tyrell is your son," she whispered. "He wouldn't betray me." "Tyrell is a coward," I said. "As soon as the detective showed him the pictures of you and Raymond, as soon as he realized you were planning to cut him out of the money, he sang like a bird. He told them everything. He told them how you mixed the warfarin. He told them how you staged the fall. He told them you gave the order to burn the house." "No!" she screamed, backing away towards the door. "That is a lie. Tyrell is lying." "And Courtney," I continued, stepping closer. "Courtney tried to cut a deal too. She handed over the text messages, Delilah. The messages where you told her to make sure it looked like an accident. The messages where you complained that I was taking too long to die." I stood right in front of her now. I towered over her. "You are alone, Delilah. The money is frozen. The boyfriend is gone. I assume he ran as soon as he saw the police cars. And your partners have turned on you. You have nothing. You are nothing." She looked around the room, frantically searching for a way out. Her eyes darted to the back door. "Don't bother," I said. "There are officers in the backyard too." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw real fear. Not the fake panic she performed for the neighbors, but the deep primal terror of a woman facing the consequences of her own malice. "Arthur, please," she begged, grabbing my arm. Her nails dug into my sleeve. "Don't do this. I am your wife. We have history. 40 years, Arthur. Doesn't that mean anything? I can change. We can fix this. I will leave Raymond. I will testify against Courtney. Just tell them I didn't know. Please, Arthur. I am an old woman. I can't go to prison. I will die in there. I looked down at her. I looked at the face I had kissed every morning for 4 decades. I looked for a shred of love. I looked for a spark of the woman I used to know. But there was nothing. Just a void. Just a predator who was sorry she got caught. You should have thought about that before you tried to burn me alive, I said. I looked towards the kitchen and nodded. Detective, take her away. Uniformed officers stepped out from the kitchen and the dining room. They had been there the whole time, listening to every word, listening to her confess. Delilah screamed as they grabbed her. It was a high-pitched, animalistic shriek. No, no! Arthur, help me! Get your hands off me! They pulled her arms behind her back. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was the final punctuation mark on our marriage. Arthur, she screamed as they dragged her towards the door. I hate you. I hope you die alone. You are a monster. I stood in the center of the room and watched them drag her out. She kicked and fought, losing a shoe in the process. She looked pathetic. She looked small. I am not a monster, Delilah, I said softly, though she couldn't hear me anymore. I am just a man who survived you. The door slammed shut. The flashing lights outside painted the walls in red and blue one last time before fading away as the cruiser drove off. I was alone. The house was silent. The smell of smoke was still there, but underneath it I could smell the rain coming in through the broken door. It smelled like cleansing. It smelled like a storm that had finally passed. I walked to the door and locked the deadbolt. It was broken, but I turned the lock anyway out of habit. I turned off the porch light. I walked back into the living room. I looked at the spot where the fire had burned the rug. I would have to replace that. I would have to replace the curtains. I would have to replace a lot of things. But I wouldn't have to replace my dignity. I had kept that. I sat down in my armchair. The one they had dragged me out of. I sat there in the dark and listened to the rain fall on the roof. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. In and out, deep, clean breaths of air that wasn't poisoned, air that was mine. I was 71 years old. I had no wife. I had no son. But I had the truth. And for tonight, that was enough. 2 months later, I sat in the back row of the Fulton County Courthouse and watched the final act of the play. The air in the room smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I wore my best suit, the charcoal gray one I used to wear to church on Easter Sunday. But I wasn't there to pray. I was there to witness the end of an error. The judge was a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose. She didn't look at the defendants with pity. She looked at them with the cold, hard gaze of justice. Courtney stood first. She had lost weight in jail. Her roots were showing dark against the blonde dye job that was growing out. She didn't look like the high society wife anymore. She looked like what she always was. A grifter. A killer. When the judge read the verdict, Courtney didn't cry. She just stared at the wall. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the murder of Michael Evans and the attempted murder of Arthur Robinson. The judge called her a predator. She said Courtney was a danger to society who viewed human beings as ATMs to be broken open. As the bailiff shackled her ankles, Courtney turned and looked at me one last time. There was no hate in her eyes anymore. Just emptiness. She was a machine that had finally been unplugged. Then it was Tyrell's turn. My son stood up. He looked small in his orange jumpsuit. He looked like a child wearing a costume that was too big for him. He wept openly when the judge spoke. 20 years. 20 years for conspiracy to commit murder and arson. The judge gave him leniency for his cooperation, but she made it clear. Betraying your father is a crime against nature. Tyrell looked back at me, mouthing the words, I am sorry. I didn't mouth anything back. I just nodded slowly. I acknowledged his existence, but I did not offer him absolution. He had 20 years to find forgiveness for himself. Delilah was last. My wife of 40 years. She had aged 10 years and 2 months. Her hair was gray and thin. Her posture was slumped. She pleaded guilty to being an accessory and to fraud. She tried to tell the judge she was manipulated. She tried to play the victim one last time. But the judge had seen the photos. She had seen the texts. 15 years. That was the sentence. At 65 years old, 15 years was effectively a life sentence. She screamed when they took her away. She screamed my name. But I didn't flinch. I watched the doors close behind her, and I felt a weight lift off my chest that I hadn't realized I was carrying for decades. I walked out of the courthouse and down the marble steps. The sun was shining. It was a bright, clear Atlanta afternoon. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the oxygen of a new life. Abraham Cohen was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. He shook my hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. We both knew that justice had been served, but the price had been high. The next week was a blur of activity. I didn't go back to the house to sleep. I couldn't. The smell of smoke and betrayal was too thick in the walls. I hired a crew to repair the fire damage, and then I did the only thing that made sense. I put a for sale sign in the yard. The bidding war was fierce. People love a house with a story even if they don't know the whole truth. I sold it for 20% over the asking price. I sold the furniture. I sold the china. I sold the paintings Delilah loved so much. I liquidated everything. Every single object that held a memory of the lie I had lived was turned into cash. When the check cleared, I went to Cohen's office. I sat down and slid a piece of paper across his desk. "This is for the foundation," I said. Cohen picked it up and raised his eyebrows. "The Michael Evans Scholarship Fund, for underprivileged kids who want to study engineering and mechanics." "That is a lot of money," Arthur Cohen said quietly. "You are giving away almost 80% of your estate." "I don't need it," I said. "I have my pension. I have my Social Security. This money was the poison that killed my family. Abraham. If I keep it, it will rot me too." Michael wanted to help people. He wanted to catch bad guys. Well, this money is going to help kids build things instead of destroying them. It is going to build a future for kids like we used to be. Cohen nodded slowly, wiping a tear from his eye. Michael would have loved this. I signed the papers. I watched the ink dry. It felt good. It felt clean. I was no longer the rich target. I was just Arthur. With the money I kept, I made one purchase. I went to a dealership on the outskirts of town. I didn't look at the sports cars or the luxury sedans. I walked straight to the back lot. There she was, a 30-foot Winnebago, a recreational vehicle, a house on wheels. It wasn't flashy. It was sturdy. It had a good engine, a diesel pusher that could climb mountains and cross deserts. I bought it cash. I spent 3 days outfitting it. I stocked the fridge with healthy food. No more sugar, no more poison. I loaded my tools. I loaded my books, and I loaded the few photos I had kept. Photos of my parents, photos of me and Michael fishing. On the dashboard right next to the steering wheel, I taped a picture of Michael. He was laughing, holding up a catfish the size of his leg. It was taken 10 years ago on a trip to the bayou. He looked happy. He looked alive. I climbed into the driver's seat. The seat was high up. I could see the road stretching out in front of me. I turned the key. The engine roared to life with a deep, reassuring rumble. It was a different sound than the Mustang. The Mustang was about speed. This was about the journey. I looked at the rear-view mirror. I saw the empty lot where my house used to be. I saw the ghost of the man I used to be standing there, weighing down by expectations and obligations. I blinked, and he was gone. I looked at the photo on the dash. "Well, Mike," I said aloud, "we finally got that road trip we always talked about. You navigate. I will drive." I shifted into gear and pulled out onto the highway. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I wasn't running away. I was running towards something. I learned a hard lesson this year. I learned that DNA is just a biological accident. It doesn't make a family. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. Love is not about who sits at your dinner table and eats your food. Love is about who stands by you when the house is on fire. I spent my whole life trying to buy the love of people who only saw me as a paycheck. I thought if I provided enough, if I sacrificed enough, they would love me back. But you can't buy love. You can only rent it. And the rent is always due. I am 71 years old. I have no wife. I have no children. I have no house foundation. By society's standards, I am a failure. I am an old man alone in the world. But as I drive down this highway with the window down and the wind in my hair, I have never felt richer. I have my dignity. I have my health. I have the truth. And I have the memory of a best friend who loved me enough to save my life from beyond the grave. I am not alone. I am accompanied by the truth. So if you are watching this and you feel trapped by people who claim to love you while holding a knife behind their back, listen to me. It is better to walk alone in the light than to sit with wolves in the dark. Don't wait until the house is on fire to find the exit. My name is Arthur Robinson. I am a mechanic. I am a survivor. And I am finally free. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you have ever had to cut toxic family out of your life. I will be reading every single one of them from the road. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your heart safe. The journey is just beginning. This journey taught me that we often cling to toxic people simply because they share our last name. We mistake endurance for love and silence for loyalty. But I learned that true family isn't about DNA. It is about who hands you the water when you are thirsty, not the one who poisons the well. Protecting your peace is not a betrayal. It is an act of survival. No matter how old you are, you have the right to burn the bridges that lead back to pain. The sun always rises on a new life if you have the courage to drive toward it. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice and resilience. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to save yourself? Tell me your story in the comments below. I will be reading them from the road. Stay safe and remember, you are the driver of your own life.